Chapter 470. By the time Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi left Medicine Ghost Valley, it was already daybreak. Han Yunxi didn't catch up on sleep after a sleepless night. Instead, she leaned against the window and stared at Long Feiyi the entire time. If this was any other day, Long Feiyi would have picked up a book and started flipping through it. She used to stare at him like this all the time anyway. But this time, Long Feiyi seemed a little uncomfortable. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Your Highness, there's something Qinxie can't figure out." Han Yunxi shifted into a more comfortable position as she spoke. She was exhausted after a night of tossing and turning. Long Feiyi asked, "What is it?" "Your Highness," judging from Gu Qisha's appearance, Han Yunxi trailed off in thought. Long Feiyi looked at her, a complicated look in his eyes as he waited. After a long time, Han Yunxi continued. "I'm afraid he really doesn't know who bought the antidote. Could the buyer have something to do with Mute Granny? Could it be that Mute Granny isn't dead yet? Perhaps it's just a coincidence." Long Feiyi didn't hesitate. After Mute Granny fell off the cliff, Chu Shifeng immediately sent people to search for her. Although they didn't find her body, it's unlikely that she was rescued. Han Yunxi had hesitated for so long because she didn't think it was likely either. Perhaps it really was just a coincidence that someone else had been poisoned with Mute Granny's broomcorn millet poison. Han Yunxi sighed softly and gave up in the end. Long Feiyi wasn't planning to speak, but for some reason, he asked, "Han Yunxi, don't you suspect your lordship?" Han Yunxi was amused. She took it as a joke. "If Qinxie suspects your highness, will your highness admit it?" Long Feiyi's heart ached for her as he looked at her innocent smile. He had seen this woman's infatuated expression countless times, but this was the first time he saw her foolishness. "Han Yunxi, you're such a smart and foolish girl. Since I lied to you, no matter what, I will lie to you for the rest of my life." Long Feiyi scooped Han Yunxi into his arms and hugged her tightly. His voice was as firm as Gu Qisha's. "Even if you beat me to death, I won't admit it." Han Yunxi burst out laughing. She really didn't think too much about it. She was a pure and resolute person. If she chose to believe, she would not doubt. Once she doubted, she would no longer believe. After a long while, Han Yunxi finally spoke, "Your Highness, if you dare to lie to me, I'll treat it as 100 times and never believe you again." "Qin Wangfei, are you warning me?" Long Feiyi's hot, threatening breath brushed against Han Yunxi's shoulders. Han Yunxi immediately shrank back, but she still replied stubbornly, "Yes." Long Feiyi didn't speak, but lowered his head to plant a deep kiss on her neck. After a long time, he finally let go. Your lordship will remember." Han Yunxi wilted. She didn't dare to banter with him anymore and changed the topic. "Your Highness, Qinxie is planning to open a chain of pharmacies for Pill Fiend Pharmacy." Chain. This was the first time Long Feiyi had heard of such a thing. It means opening branch stores. "Once we open the first one in the capital, we'll start opening branches in the larger counties and counties. We might even open branches in northern Li and western Zhou. At the very least, we'll be able to gain a foothold in the medical community," Han Yunxi said seriously. She was doing all this because she couldn't stand Gu Qisha's way of doing things, and because she was thinking far ahead. Cloud Realm Continent's most unique power lay in the medical community. Medical City controlled the right to practice medicine, while Medicine City monopolized the market for high-quality medicinal ingredients. For example, the imperial pharmacies of the 3 countries all came from Medicine City. Under these circumstances, they would never be able to break free from Medical and Medicine City's control if they didn't control their own medical resources. Now they had Pill Fiend Valley to rely on, as well as a strange old man like Gu Qisha who knew how to grow herbs. At the very least, she and Long Fei wouldn't be restricted by Medicine City when it came to medicinal ingredients. Medicine didn't mean much when it wasn't needed, but when it was needed, it could mean the difference between life and death. Last time they went to the disaster areas, Gu Beiyue had given her 3 brocade pouches to prevent the spread of the plague. Fortunately, the plague hadn't broken out on a large scale. Otherwise, she'd have to find Medicine City to get her supplies even if she knew how to use them. A plague like this was fine on a small scale, but on a large scale, the amount of medicine needed was comparable to the amount of grain used. Moreover, on the battlefield, countless people would be injured or injured. Whether it was the front lines or the rear lines, there would be no shortage of doctors and medicine. Although she was on good terms with Third Elder in Medical City, while Long Fei had Wang Gong as his friend despite the difference in age in Medicine City, neither Third Elder nor Wang Gong could represent Medical City or Medicine City. Thus, they had to have their own bargaining chips. Han Yunxi told Long Fei all of this, which surprised him greatly. Seeing Han Yunxi's serious expression, Long Fei's heart throbbed. He never expected Han Yunxi to think so far ahead. With a wife like this, what more could a husband ask for? When they returned to Tianning's capital city, the first thing Long Fei did was give the keys to the abandoned courtyard to Steward Luo and order him to find someone to build a medicine hall according to Han Yunxi's requests within a month. Apparently, noble Consort Chu from the palace had sent 2 more invitations, but Long Fei had refused on Han Yunxi's behalf. Han Yunxi had only rested for a few days before she ran all day to the construction site. Without a doubt, Pill Fiend Pharmacy would be her future base of revolution. She originally wanted to find Gu and Mu Ling, to talk about becoming a pharmacist at Pill Fiend Pharmacy, but found that she had no idea how to find them. Without a choice, Gu could only come find her. In any case, Pill Fiend Pharmacy would take some time to finish, so she could only wait. Su Xiaoyu's scalp had healed, but her hair hadn't grown back yet. Her buzz cut made her look like a tomboy. She moved back to the leisurely cloud pavilion and stuck to Han Yunxi even more than before. She followed Han Yunxi to the construction site every day. Long Fei's second order of business was to have Chu Shifeng investigate the grudges between Gu Qixia and Medical City. Despite his busy schedule, Chu Shifeng didn't forget one thing. Last time, esteemed Wang Fei had invited Gu inside. Had His Highness Duke of Qin forgotten? Wasn't he going to settle accounts with esteemed Wang Fei? Of course, Chu Shifeng didn't have the guts to ask. He only assumed that His Highness had forgotten about the matter. Today, as soon as Han Yunxi returned, Bailey Mingxiang sent Su Xiaoyu away and said in a low voice, "Esteemed Wang Fei, this servant found something that might belong to little you, As she spoke, she took out a small pouch from her sleeve. Han Yunxi opened it and saw a bunch of rainbow-colored beads inside. They looked very much like signal flares. Where did they come from? Han Yunxi asked. They came from the banyan tree behind the leisurely cloud pavilion. There's a small hole in the tree, Bailey Mingxiang replied honestly. Han Yunxi pondered over it for a long time, but couldn't figure out how to use them. She quickly handed them over to Long Fei. Bailey Mingxiang stopped at the entrance to his sleeping quarters. Han Yunxi didn't notice, but hurried into the study. She discovered that Long Fei had fallen asleep on his desk. A few secret missives were strewn across the surface, some of which had been read while others were still unopened. No matter how urgent the matter was, Han Yunxi didn't panic at the sight. Fine, her heart ached. She sat quietly on one side, afraid to wake Long Fei. He told her to rest every day, but he was so tired himself. Han Yunxi waited until night fell. Long Fei's sleeping quarters were filled with stones. It was already cold, but at night, it was even colder. Han Yunxi was the mistress of the house. She easily found Long Fei Ye's cloak in the bedroom and wanted to put it on him. Who knew that just as she approached, Long Fei Ye would wake up and choke her without any explanation. Han Yunxi didn't expect this and was stunned. Long Fei Ye saw that it was her and immediately let go. Does it hurt? Han Yunxi coughed for a while before she recovered. It hurt. This guy's grip was so strong. If he choked her a little longer, she might really stop breathing. He was so alert even when he was sleeping here. No wonder he was so tired. Did this guy ever truly relax? It doesn't hurt. Han Yunxi put on the cloak. Your Highness, if it's possible, let Qinxia share some of your worries. Why are you suddenly here? Is something the matter? Long Fei Yi asked. He knew that Han Yunxi basically wouldn't come here if there wasn't anything important. Han Yunxi then remembered the thing in her hand and hurriedly showed it to Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi was shocked when he saw it. Where did you get it? Bailey Mingxiang found it in the tree hole behind Leisurely Cloud Pavilion. It's very likely that it belongs to Su Xiaoyu, Han Yunxi said. Long Fei Yi led Han Yunxi to the courtyard. She put one in her mouth and spat it out. This small thing actually shot up and exploded in mid-air, emitting a blinding white light. Although it was fleeting, it was still clear if one looked carefully. Then, he tried another one. It actually emitted a dazzling red light. Your Highness, this really is a signal flare. Han Yunxi was astonished. Without a doubt, this thing really did belong to Su Xiaoyu. This is the Western Zhou Imperial clan's unique 7-colored signal. Different colors represent different meanings. Only the Imperial Guards can understand what it means. Long Fei Yi and Western Zhou's princess, Duan Muyao, had known each other since childhood. Duan Muyao had played with this thing when they were very young, so he recognized it. Western Zhou. Duan Muyao. Han Yunxi immediately thought of this woman. Western Zhou's Princess Yao, Long Fei Ye's junior sister, and the woman who wanted to marry into the Duke of Qin's estate. It's unlikely to be her. Duan Muyao had been deposed by Western Zhou's emperor after being exposed for colluding with Jun Yixia. She had been hiding in Tianshan Kenzhou all this time, so it wouldn't be easy for her to arrange for Su Xiaoyu to enter the Duke of Qin's estate. Moreover, it wasn't her style to do something so meticulous. Your Highness, does Chu Qingge understand the Imperial clan's secret signal? Han Yunxi asked again. Besides Duan Muyao, the only other person she could think of was Chu Qingge. Hadn't they saved Su Xiaoyu because of her? That doesn't seem like her style. But it's definitely related to Western Zhou's people. As Long Fei Yi spoke, he used up his signal flares one after another, causing them to explode in the air. Now that we have a clue, there's no need to fear that we won't be able to find it. Han Yunxi knew that Long Fei Yi had a plan in mind. She took out a signal flare of her own and copied Long Fei Ye's actions. Unfortunately, she didn't have any internal energy, so she couldn't detonate it. At this moment, a tall white figure stood on a rooftop not too far away from the Duke of Qin's estate. He looked in the direction of the Duke of Qin's estate, his dark eyes reflecting the flashes of light. After a while, Ning Jing returned to the air above the Duke of Qin's estate. He muttered, "The Nether clan has finally come." Chapter 471. The moonlight was like a dream, and his white robes were whiter than snow. A clear aura emanated from the white-robed man's body, clear and untainted. His eyes were peaceful and serene, always gentle and quiet. When he looked in the direction of the Duke of Qin's estate, his gaze was filled with pity. He stood there for a long time. By the time the Duke of Qin's estate regained its peace and quiet, there were no more fireworks in the air, but he still didn't leave. It was as if his mind had wandered off, or he was thinking about something else. Or maybe he was just lingering around and forgetting to leave. Finally, he heard the sounds of the Duke of Qin's night guards patrolling the area. With a soft sigh, he vanished into thin air. Since the Nether clan had already found their way to the Duke of Qin's estate, it was time for him to pay a visit to an old friend he hadn't seen in years. Night in the capital city was solemn and silent. The white-robed man flitted through the shadows of the streets and alleys that Su Xiaoyu had walked through before. Chu Tiannin's hideout in Tianning's capital city was hidden within the alleys and streets of the city. Currently, he was still awake, playing with an exquisitely crafted crossbow in the courtyard. "It's so late, but you're still up. It looks like my arrival doesn't count as a disturbance." The white-robed man's voice reached Chu Tiannin before he arrived. Chu Tiannin was so alarmed that he almost dropped the crossbow in his hands. He rose to his feet and scanned his surroundings, but didn't see a single person. But he knew it was the white-robed man from the Shadow Clan. "Still not coming out? I've looked for you at least 10 times. Why haven't I seen you?" Chu Tiannin demanded. Last time he and Duanmu Bei had come to celebrate the emperor's birthday, they'd looked for this fellow as well. Unfortunately, the man refused to see them and didn't reply to any of their letters. In the past, the Shadow and Nether clans had worked together to protect the orphan of Western Qin's imperial clan. The Nether clan's Chu clan had concealed their identities and followed the Western Zhou emperor. After 2 generations of hard work, they now controlled half of Western Zhou's military power and gained a firm foothold in the region. Meanwhile, the white-robed man was the only one left of the Shadow clan. He was still a sickly invalid who relied on medicine to keep himself alive. Although the 2 clans hadn't kept in touch much, they were still aware of each other's movements over the years. One thing that Chu Tiannin was very dissatisfied with was that the Chu clan had never stopped looking for the imperial orphan all these years. However, this Shadow clan fellow didn't seem to care about this matter at all. He wasn't worried at all. "Su Xiaoyu from the Duke of Qin's manor is one of your people, right?" His deep and magnetic voice sounded especially enchanting in the quiet night. It was a pity that Chu Tiannin wasn't a woman, otherwise he would have fallen in love with it. Following the sound, he looked towards the roof and saw that the young man in white was already sitting on the roof ridge. Chu Tiannin used his lightness kung fu to fly up. Without saying anything, he actually moved his hands to remove the white-clothed young master's mask. The white-clothed man seemed to be motionless, but just as Chu Tiannin's hand was about to grab the white veil, he immediately disappeared into thin air. When he reappeared, he was already in the courtyard. Chu Tiannin chased after him and coldly snorted. "We haven't seen each other in so many years. Why don't you show your face?" Naturally, Chu Tiannin had seen the white-clothed man's true face before, but he didn't like it when the man came to see him with his face covered. They were supposed to be close allies, but the man's veil gave him a sense of alienation. The white-clothed man sat down by the stone table and said, "You wouldn't be stupid enough to provoke the Duke of Qin's manor at a time like this, would you?" Chu Tiannin had hidden himself in Tianning's capital city for 2 reasons. 1. Han Yunxi. Another, he was Chu Qing's military advisor behind the scenes. He wanted to help her seize the position of Empress, which was ultimately to seize power in Tianning. When it came to fighting for power, the Duke of Qin's manor was his strongest and final enemy. But Chu Tiannin wasn't stupid enough to provoke the Duke of Qin at a time like this. He had sent Su Xiaoyu into the Duke of Qin's estate purely to confirm whether or not Han Yunxi had a phoenix birthmark on her back. "I mentioned this in my secret letter to you last year. You didn't read it?" Chu Tiannin asked with furrowed brows. He had written this man a letter before coming to Tianning's capital city to mention his suspicions about Han Yunxi. In front of all the servants, Chu Tiannin was always methodical and calm. However, in front of the white-clothed gentleman, he could not remain calm. He had always hoped that the white-clothed gentleman would help him, but the white-clothed gentleman did not even reply to a single letter. How could it be her? The white-robed man was astonished. Then did Su Xiaoyu see that birthmark? Chu Tiannin's expression turned even uglier. He didn't reply, so the white-robed man asked again, "So, you found the wrong person?" Chu Tiannin was very gloomy. "Our only clue is gone, and we even lost a servant girl." The white-robed man silently exhaled. He had no idea why Su Xiaoyu had given him the wrong information, but this result was worth celebrating. "What do we do now?" Chu Tiannin asked. "We'll keep looking." "What else can we do?" the white-robed man retorted. Chu Tiannin grew angry. "Is this the so-called loyalty of your shadow clan? Your so-called protection? You've already lost her, but you still have this attitude. Then what kind of attitude should I have?" "Not looking," the white-robed man retorted. Chu Tiannin felt stifled. "You." The Chu clan has eyes and ears all over the world, but they still can't find her, much less a loner like me. "Eldest Sir Chu, I only came tonight to give you a warning. The rainbow-colored signal flares have already fallen into the Duke of Qin's hands, so you're on your own now." The rainbow-colored signal flares were used exclusively by Western Zhou's imperial family. Chu Tiannin had gotten them from Duanmu Bei's side. With Long Fei Ye's intelligence, it wasn't impossible for him to suspect the Chu clan. Although Long Fei Ye wasn't the master of the 3,000 imperial harem, it'd be difficult for Chu Qingge to survive in the harem if she angered him. Chu Tiannin had come to help Chu Qingge, but he might end up harming her instead. The white-robed man prepared to leave as soon as he finished speaking, but Chu Tiannin stopped him. Lowering his voice to a whisper, he said, "Emperor Tianhui's illness or death is all in your hands. If you're willing to help Qingge, what can the Duke of Qin do no matter how powerful he is?" The white-robed man's warm gaze turned cold at his words. "I'm not interested in matters of the imperial court. This isn't just about Tianning's court, but the revival of Western Qin's great cause." "You're not interested?" Chu Tiannin asked. "Reviving Western Qin is a matter for Western Qin's imperial clan, not your Chu clan's." The white-robed man's tone was still mild, but his drooping eyes were filled with loathing. What he hated the most was nothing more than recruiting soldiers and fighting for power under the banner of assisting the imperial family and reviving the great cause of the imperial family. He wasn't sure if Chu Tiannin was the same, but he was certain that the elders of the Chu clan all harbored such selfish motives. Chu Tiannin only felt that the white-robed man couldn't be reasoned with. He was about to retort when the man's figure flashed away. There were many things he could help with, but the Shadow Clan's protection was only protection. That was all. Actually, the Shadow Clan had secretly helped Western Qin's infant girl escape from the Nether Clan's custody after she grew up. The Shadow Clan had always known that the bloodline of Western Qin's imperial clan was in Medicine City's Mu clan. However, Mu Axian disappeared after having an affair with the remnants of the poison sect. He hadn't been born then, so it was his father who'd lost track of Mu Axian's whereabouts. It wasn't until Han Yunxi opened the Xian gold door in the sky pit that he was certain that Han Yunxi was the daughter of Mu Axian and the poison sect's young sect leader. Only the blood of a direct descendant of the poison sect could open the Xian gold door, and only the aura of that blood could subdue the poison beasts. If not for Chu Tiannin's letter and Han Yunxi's mysterious poison skills, he would never have guessed that the Lady Tianxin he'd seen in his grandfather's consultation as a child was the disguised Lady Mu Axian. He couldn't do something as private as the birthmark, but he could still do the blood test on the Xian gold door. The medical academy director Shi Yubo, who'd led Long Tianma's relapse, had come to Tianning under his orders. It was also because of Long Tianma's relapse that Han Yunxi had come to Medical City. He'd never mentioned any of these things to anyone in the Nether Clan, nor would he ever mention them. His only regret was that he hadn't expected to run into so many people in the sky pit, much less that Long Fei Yi, Jun Xia, and the rest could see through the Shadow Clan's shadow arts. He assumed that everything about the Shadow Clan had been buried in the dust of history with the demise of Western Qin's imperial clan. He had no idea how many people he'd fooled with his excuse of going after the poison beast. At the very least, he began to pay attention to the movements of Jun Xia and the rest, as well as the other descendants of nobles. Leaving Han Yunxi by Long Fei Ye's side was still the wisest choice for now. Any faction that wanted to touch her would have to get past the Duke of Qin first. The Duke of Qin was a man destined to control the world and dominate Cloud Realm continent. Meanwhile, he was all alone and sickly. No matter how fast he moved, he'd never be faster than death. A gust of wind stirred up his white robes as he disappeared into the empty streets, leaving behind only heart-wrenching coughs. Many sleepless nights were filled with sleepless people. In the imperial palace, Chu Qingge had been suffering from insomnia for multiple nights. She'd heard from eunuch Luo that Emperor Tianhui had asked imperial physician Gu how long it'd take for them to have intercourse. She'd been in the palace for 2 months, but Emperor Tianhui had yet to visit her. It wasn't because she'd fallen out of favor, but because Emperor Tianhui had yet to recover from his illness. All of the imperial physicians had told him not to eat meat, or else, all right, she couldn't imagine it, nor did she want to. Although the imperial physicians had said they'd keep him under observation for a few more days, she'd managed to escape disaster. Still, she was clear that she'd be doomed in the end. Sometimes, she'd be impulsive enough to poison Emperor Tianhui to death, but once he died, she'd have no heir. She'd only benefit the crown prince. A mother's status depended on her son. No matter how much Emperor Tianhui admired her, she still needed a son if she wanted to gain a foothold in the imperial harem. If she wanted a son, she'd have to gain Emperor Tianhui's favor first. Although she'd sworn to her father that she'd endure humiliation and take the throne of Tianning's empress, she still couldn't help but cry every night. At times like this, only her hatred for Han Yunxi kept her going. If it wasn't for Han Yunxi, she wouldn't have played the zither so loudly at the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet to attract Emperor Tianhui's attention, much less enter the palace to investigate noble consort Shue's poisoning. She'd already invited Han Yunxi 3 times in the name of noble consort Shue, but the woman refused to enter the palace even once. Chu Qingge tossed and turned on her bed, unable to fall asleep. She was about to find her personal mama to discuss how to force Han Yunxi into the palace when Chu Tianning's secret missive arrived before the two of them had a chance to speak. Chapter 472. Every time Chu Qingge received one of Chu Tianning's letters, she was extremely reluctant to open it. Ever since she'd entered the palace, Chu Tianning had only sent her 2 kinds of secret missives. One was to teach her how to please Emperor Tianhui, while the other was to warn her not to have any designs on Han Yunxi. Chu Qingge clutched the letter tightly in her hands and refused to read it. Su Mama, who had accompanied her as part of her dowry, stood on one side for a long time before she couldn't help but speak up. Esteemed Wang Fei, perhaps eldest young master has some urgent business. It's better to hurry and take a look. What urgent business could he have? I'm in an abyss of suffering here, but he won't let me touch Han Yunxi. Secondly, he wants me to tolerate Empress Dowager Li and the rest. What's there to be anxious about? Chu Qingge gave a cold snort. Esteemed Wang Fei, eldest young master is right. His Majesty isn't blind. He can see everything that goes on in the imperial harem. We're new to the palace, so we should tolerate everything. First, we need to gain Emperor Tianhui's approval. If we overstep our bounds in the future, he'll only turn a blind eye to it, Su Mama coaxed. Over the past few days, noble consort Shue's little tricks had come one after another. Although none of them were major incidents, her personality couldn't stand it. If Big Brother hadn't stopped her, she would have poisoned noble Consort Shui ages ago. Esteemed Wang Fei, didn't His Majesty keep you company in the imperial study these days? Even noble Consort Shui was sent away. You still haven't vented your anger. Su Mama coaxed again. Vent my anger. Who does noble Consort Shui think she is? Only by killing Han Yunxi will I feel better. Chu Qingge coldly spoke her mind. Su Mama was helpless. After some hesitation, she spoke up. Esteemed Wang Fei, this old servant doesn't understand one thing. Inciting discord between Han Yunxi and Empress Dowager Li is killing two birds with one stone. Why doesn't eldest young master agree to it? Even if we can't do that, eldest young master must have a better idea. After being warned to stay away from Han Yunxi time and time again, Chu Qingge had naturally considered this problem. She gave a cold snort and said, he and father are both afraid of offending His Highness Duke of Qin. Qin Mama didn't know what to say at esteemed noble consort's attitude. Although imperial consort Nyang liked the Duke of Qin, she couldn't downplay her own prestige like this. Nyang, it's better to take a look at the secret letter. Su Mama advised again. In the end, Chu Qingge obediently opened the letter. If Big Brother really had urgent business, she wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. But Chu Qingge only grinned from ear to ear as soon as she read the letter. Wonderful. This is great. Big Brother finally understood. Her brother's secret letter actually told her to calm down and not to invite Han Yunxi into the palace in the near future. He had his own ways to sow discord between Empress Dowager Li and Han Yunxi. Su Mama was in disbelief. She took the secret letter and read it. It was true. Imperial consort, why is eldest young master here? Su Mama asked suspiciously. He must have thought things through and grown bolder. Chu Qingge didn't care so much. As long as she had her big brother's help, she refused to believe that she couldn't defeat Han Yunxi. As for Long Fei Yi, it wouldn't be good for him to keep getting involved in women's affairs, would it? That night, Chu Qingge was finally in a good mood. She slept peacefully, but one woman didn't sleep at all. Her eyes were wide open until daybreak. In the restaurant closest to the Duke of Qin's estate, Mu Ling had been sprawled in front of the window for an entire night, lost in thought. Although she didn't have much silver left on her, she still insisted on staying in the most expensive room, Sky Room 2. That was because Qi brother had reserved Sky Room 1. It was most likely that he'd stay here as soon as he arrived in the capital. Ever since she'd stopped Han Yunxi's carriage last time, she'd arrived in Tianning's capital city. Since she couldn't find Qi brother, she could only wait here. Although she didn't want to admit it, she was certain that Qi brother would come looking for Han Yunxi one day. Recently, news of Medicine Ghost Valley selling medicine and collaborating with Han Yunxi to open a Medicine Ghost Valley in Tianning's capital city had spread like wildfire. Although she never asked about outside matters, she still paid attention to news from Medicine Ghost Valley. Although she abhorred Pill Fiend Valley's practice of storing medicinal herbs and not selling them, she still admired Gu Qixu's ability to concoct medicine. She couldn't figure out why Gu Qixu was willing to work with Han Yunxi in the first place. Why did he suddenly change his mind and agree to sell medicine? What the hell? Mu Ling was lost in thought when her stomach rumbled. She was hungry again. She'd been protected by her father ever since she was a child and rarely left the house. Although she didn't have the temper of a rich young lady, she was still a rich young lady. She'd never known the hardships of life. Now that she was wandering the streets, she didn't have enough silver in her purse to pay for her room. Her source of income had been cut off as well, making her feel terrible. Ever since her father told her to sneak back to Medicine City and stay in the Mu clan's secret room to continue making medicine for the clan, she'd never contacted him again. She was very clear that it'd be difficult for her to leave that secret room again if she went back. Her father doted on her not because she was his daughter, but because she was a genius pharmacist. He wouldn't hand her over to Medicine City's Council of Elders, nor would he offend all of Medicine City for her sake. Thus, he could only keep her trapped in the Mu clan. She hated being reduced to a tool. She hated days without freedom. Chi brother, where are you? If you don't show up soon, Ling will starve to death. Mu Ling sighed and decided to catch up on some sleep. She wouldn't feel hungry if she fell asleep, right? She also needed to save money to pay for her room. Some people couldn't sleep, while others stayed up all night. However, Han Yunxi slept all the way until dawn. The matter of the rainbow signal flare was left to Long Fei Yi to investigate. She was still worried about her pill fiend pharmacy. Although Steward Luo was overseeing the reconstruction, there were still many things that she had to do personally. For example, the blueprint for the pharmacy, the pricing of the medicinal ingredients, the recruitment of pharmacists, apprentices, servants, and guards, the rules and regulations of Medicine Ghost Valley, and many other things. Just the blueprint alone was enough to give Han Yunxi a headache. It involved the appearance of the pharmacy, the storehouse, and so on. She had to carefully consider everything before starting work. After all, she didn't just want to store half of the ingredients, she wanted to store high-quality ones. The higher quality the ingredients, the more expensive they were. Thus, the requirements for the storage environment were very high. Han Yunxi had a lot of good medicinal ingredients on hand. She threw all of them into the detoxification system for automatic storage. She didn't need to think so much before, but now that she had to deal with so many things, she was a little overwhelmed. There were a few times when she was so tired that she thought of stealing all of Gu Qixu's medicinal ingredients into her detoxification system. However, it was just a thought. She originally wanted to find Gu Qixu to discuss it with her, but after thinking about it, she realized that he wasn't reliable. Unfortunately, she couldn't find Gu Beiyue and Mu Ling, so she could only ask Gu Beiyue for help. Today was the day that Gu Beiyue came to the Han family's clinic in the eastern part of the city. Han Yunxi woke up early and went to the eastern part of the city to help out. 7th Madam, and Chen Xiang hadn't seen her for a long time and were chatting non-stop. Gu Beiyue, on the other hand, came in and bowed to her before getting busy. He saw more than 50 patients in one day. It was already dark and dinner was ready, but he still couldn't get away. Esteemed Wang Fei, Imperial Physician Gu will tire himself out. Tell him to stop, Madame Helian said seriously. Madame Helian was the Han family's 7th Madam, Helian Zuixiang. She was the only concubine in the Han family now. As grew older, everyone started calling her Madam. She lived up to the title of a Madam. She didn't know how to manage things at first, but now she managed the entire Han family well and taught well. Han Yunxi looked at Gu Beiyue's calm and pale face and felt her heart ache. However, she knew that it was useless to try to persuade him. Gu Beiyue came to the clinic at a fixed time every month for consultations. Most of the difficult cases were waiting for him, so there were naturally many people waiting in line. If he didn't finish today, he would have to wait another month. As a physician, he knew very well what a month meant to a patient. Therefore, every time he came, he would see all the people in line. All Han Yunxi could do was tell the clinic to limit the number of people in line. Once Pill Fiend Pharmacy is built, it should be able to attract some famous physicians. When the time comes, Medicine Ghost Valley will provide medicine and let them come to the clinic for free, Han Yunxi said mildly. Hearing this, scooted over. Big sis, I want to take the medical school exam. I want to come back and help Big Brother Beiyue. After studying the Han family medical canon for over a year and receiving Gu Beiyue's guidance, Er's medical skills were actually on par with the doctors in the clinic. Unfortunately, He didn't have the official qualifications to practice medicine, nor did he have a doctor's rank, so many patients didn't dare to seek treatment from him. When your big brother Baiyue has time, I'll have him test you first, Han Yunxi smiled. Big sis, big brother Baiyue is already a 5th-ranked divine doctor. When will he become a divine doctor? Asked seriously. Han Yunxi pinched his little ear and smiled. Big brother Baiyue doesn't care. Why not? Didn't understand. Han Yunxi was only joking, but Gu Baiyue overheard her as he walked over. He smiled mildly. It's not that he doesn't care, it's that he hasn't formed his own sect yet. Was about to continue asking, but Madame Hellion stopped him. Children shouldn't keep asking questions. It's impolite. As she spoke, she quickly invited Han Yunxi and Gu Baiyue over. It was time for dinner. It was also on this day of the month that everyone put aside their various statuses and ate together without regard for seniority. After dinner, Han Yunxi handed the blueprints of Pill Fiend Pharmacy to Gu Baiyue. Imperial Physician Gu, help me take a look at where I need to change, especially the storeroom. Gu Baiyue looked over the blueprints carefully and made many suggestions. In the end, he said, Esteemed Wang Fei, if you want to expand your pharmacy, I'm afraid you won't be able to expand it with just the premium goods in Medicine Ghost Valley. You'll have to focus on the premium goods. Han Yunxi's heart grew quiet. How is Gu Baiyue so smart? He pointed out the problem she's been worrying about for the past few days with a single sentence. One of her goals for opening Pill Fiend Pharmacy was to sell premium medicinal ingredients, while the other was to expand its operations throughout Cloud Realm continent and gain a foothold in the medical community. Medicine Ghost Valley's premium medicinal ingredients were the high-end ones among the premium ones, while the ones that truly had a market were the low-end ones. These were all in the hands of Medicine City. Thus, once Pill Fiend Pharmacy opened, they'd have to face a problem of supply. Han Yunxi hesitated before saying, Pill Fiend Pharmacy is using Pill Fiend's name. I'm afraid Medicine City won't be willing to supply us with goods, right? Gu Baiyue smiled. Esteemed Wang Fei, there's someone who can help you. Who? Han Yunxi couldn't believe it. Even if Long Fei Yi and Wang Gong had a personal relationship, the Wang clan wouldn't help them so rashly. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's president, Ouyang Ningnuo, Gu Baiyue replied. Chapter 473. Ouyang Ningnuo. As soon as Gu Baiyue mentioned the name, Han Yunxi almost forgot about him. When she first met him on Yuzhou Island, her first impression of him was that he was shameless. He had clearly colluded with Jun Yixia on Fishery Island to take advantage of Tianning's famine to make a fortune. But when he saw Jun Yixia trapped, he switched sides and boarded Long Fei Ye's ship to donate grain to Tianning's disaster areas. In any case, he was a man who placed profit above all else and had no moral integrity at all. Still, weren't all businessmen like that? To say nothing of a big businessman like Ouyang Ningnuo. Although she didn't have a good impression of him, that didn't stop Han Yunxi from working with him. Han Yunxi knew that Ouyang Ningnuo had a lot of face in Medicine City. The 3 great clans of Medicine City and a few other families of pharmacists were skilled in cultivating medicinal ingredients, but not in selling them. Most of them had to go through vendors to sell their wares to various parts of Cloud Realm continent, from the big markets to the small pharmacies. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's vendors were the most powerful and had worked with all 3 of Medicine City's great clans to get their hands on most of the best-selling ingredients. Although Han Yunxi hadn't given the rights to any of the vendors yet and was still in the hands of Medicine City's Council of Elders, she still had a sliver of hope if Ouyang Ningnuo was willing to speak with them personally. We have to find a way to talk with him. Moreover, we can't make this matter public, Han Yunxi said seriously. It just so happens that the annual purchasing list for the imperial pharmacies will be out in a few days. Ouyang Ningnua will make a personal trip, so this official is willing to act as a go-between for esteemed Wang Fei, North Moon said. Han Yunxi was thrilled. Just like that, the matter was happily settled. After returning to the estate, Han Yunxi told Long Fei Yi about the matter, but Long Fei Yi only nodded without any objections. Han Yunxi then wrote a letter to Gu Qixia explaining the matter. After all, this business deal belonged to Pilfiend Pharmacy, so Gu Qixia had the right to know. Gu Qixia immediately replied. He didn't have any objections either. However, just as Gu Beiyue was about to make an appointment with Ouyang Ningnua and Han Yunxi was about to begin her first business negotiation, both Long Fei Yi and Gu Qixia wanted to tag along. Han Yunxi, accompanied by Long Fei Yi, Gu Beiyue, and Gu Qixia, appeared in front of Ouyang Ningnua. Ouyang Ningnua was flabbergasted. He'd assumed that only Gu Beiyue and Han Yunxi would be present. He'd never imagined that a freak like Gu Qixia would show up, much less that the busy Duke of Qin. Despite his stupor, Ouyang Ningnua quickly regained his senses and stood up to bow. Although Zhu Nixia had hired assassins at a sky-high price to kill him, this matter did not affect him at all. Just like when they first met on Fishery Island, he was dressed in white and had an elegant demeanor. Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, it's been a long time since we parted on Fishery Island. This humble one misses you. Lord Pilfiend, we haven't seen each other in more than 2 years. In front of these two important figures, Gu Beiyue, the head of the Imperial Academy of Medicine, was only a minor character. Ouyang Ningnua placed him at the back of the group, his attitude still friendly and courteous. Imperial Physician Gu, I trust you've been well since we last met. This guy, even in the face of an enemy, would still be so humble and courteous. Gu Beiyue hastily bowed. Thank you for your concern, President Ouyang. This humble one is well. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi clearly didn't like this and only nodded in response. As for Gu Qixia, he didn't even acknowledge Ouyang Ningnua. He'd already found a comfortable seat and sat down to drink tea. Ouyang Ningnua glanced at him but didn't make a fuss. He hurriedly invited everyone to take a seat. After Gu Beiyue briefly mentioned the matter of the premium medicinal ingredients, Han Yunxi spoke up. Since President Ouyang is sitting here today, I'm sure you're interested in this matter. You must also be confident in your ability to succeed, right? Ouyang Ningnua had been so polite and easy to talk to just a moment ago, but now he was frowning and looking like he was in a difficult position. Everyone present was smart enough to know that if this fellow was truly in a difficult position, he would have rejected them outright and wouldn't be sitting here. Before Han Yunxi could say anything, Long Fei Yi asked impatiently, What? You're not confident. It's not that I'm not confident. It's just that this matter isn't easy to handle. Ouyang Ningnua sighed. Long Fei Yi said, Whether it's easy or not is your own business. If you succeed, then there's a need for us to continue this discussion. If you can't, then all this talk is in vain. The corners of Han Yunxi's mouth twitched. She didn't know what to say. Your Highness Duke of Qin, oh, Your Highness Duke of Qin. Although we're here to negotiate, we don't have any bargaining chips. In a sense, we're just asking for help. Is it really okay to be so domineering? Ouyang Ningnua had wanted to beat around the bush, but Long Fei Yi was right in front of him. He had no choice but to simplify things. Your Highness Duke of Qin, to tell you the truth, I've been eyeing premium medicinal ingredients for 2 to 3 years now. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to secure them. I'm here today to see if Your Highness and esteemed Wang Fei have any other options. Let's discuss them together. And if this prince says no? Long Fei Yi asked. If Ouyang Ningnua couldn't secure them, then how could they? Ouyang Ning Nuo's relationship with Medicine City's Wong clan hadn't been made public, so they didn't have any connections in Medicine City. Ouyang Ning Nuo clearly knew that they didn't have any, but he still came to negotiate. It was obvious that he had other motives. Ouyang Ning Nuo hesitated. If that's the case, then this matter really isn't going to work. Han Yunxi was still mulling over Ouyang Ning Nuo's attitude when Gu Qixia suddenly slammed his teacup on the table with a loud bang. Everyone turned to look at him in surprise. Gu Qixia was calm and composed as he lazily said, "If you can't do it, then hurry up and leave. The tea here tastes terrible." Ouyang Ning Nuo was about to explain himself, but Long Feiyi had already stood up and smoothed out Han Yunxi's bangs. "Let's go." A trace of amusement flitted across Gu Beiyue's eyes, but he didn't say anything. Ouyang Ning Nuo's perpetual smile finally froze. He already had a plan in mind when Gu Beiyue brought it up, so he came to see Han Yunxi because he had a good plan. He'd originally planned to talk his way out of the matter and disappoint Han Yunxi. Then, he'd throw out an olive branch and have Han Yunxi beg him. Han Yunxi didn't have any bargaining chips in this matter. She was already 70% cooperating with him and 30% asking him for help. If he'd been able to convince her to help him, then Han Yunxi would have no choice but to let him name his terms. There would be no room for negotiation. How could he have known that this woman would bring Long Feiyi and Gu Qixia along? He also didn't expect that this woman would only say one sentence from start to finish before the negotiation fell apart. Han Yunxi wasn't an idiot. She had already guessed that something was amiss. She reached out to grab Long Feiyi's hand that was smoothing out her bangs and stood up as well. Yes, she had taken the initiative to hold Long Feiyi's hand, and Long Feiyi had allowed her to do so as well. This action was so natural that the two of them seemed to have gotten used to it. Gu Qixia and Gu Beiyue both saw this. One stared fixedly at them, while the other looked away with a faint smile on his face. Gu Qixia stood up as well. Gu Beiyue naturally didn't want to sit and followed suit. At this point, Ouyang Ning Nuo couldn't hold himself back any longer. "Duke of Qin, this one has an idea. I wonder if you'd dare to take it. Let's hear it." Long Feiyi remained unperturbed. Ouyang Ning Nuo lowered his voice. "Sky Domained Black Market." Han Yunxi was puzzled. "I want low-grade high-quality medicinal ingredients. Why would Sky Domain Black Market have them?" Most of the high-quality medicinal ingredients in the black market were sold by people in Medicine City. There weren't many of them, and most of them were high-quality ingredients. The black market doesn't have them, but the people in the black market have a good idea. Ouyang Ning Nuo's smile finally revealed a sly glint. Han Yunxi still didn't understand. Long Feiyi sneered, "Ouyang Ning Nuo, are you saying that we should just go straight to the black market and not ask you for help?" Gu Qixia was clearly trying to undermine him, but Ouyang Ning Nuo was a good-natured man. He smiled and said, "It's not that easy to find a way to the black market. Who would be willing to pull strings for you and ruin their own business for no good reason?" So, before Long Feiyi could finish, Gu Qixia flared up. "So, what are you trying to say with all this bullshit?" Long Feiyi didn't say anything. Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue also fell silent. Ouyang Ning Nuo suddenly felt awkward. He cleared his throat and said, Sit. Everyone, please sit down. This matter needs to be discussed slowly." However, no one sat down. Ouyang Ning Nuo had been through no less than 100 major negotiations ever since he'd taken charge, but this was the first time he'd lost control of the situation and the initiative. What could he do if no one sat down? He had no choice but to put it bluntly. There are two bosses in Sky Domain Black Market who split all of its businesses equally. One of them is called Zhangsun Zilan, and he's a meticulous demon. All of Sky Domain Black Market's business is under his control. He works with the young masters of Medicine City's 3 great clans all year round to inflate the prices of medicinal ingredients and swindle buyers. If we can take him down, we'll have something to use against the 3 great clans. Then we won't have to worry about not having enough bargaining chips to negotiate with them. Han Yunxi laughed. So, your so-called path is to use underhanded means to take advantage of underhanded means. The 3 big medicine families were all big families. Although they had a lot of people and a lot of businesses, the ones who were able to sell top-grade medicines in the Qingyun realm's black market had to be the young masters of their families with extremely high social status. In fact, the clan lords would tacitly approve of their actions. After all, the profits from such a business were simply too high. Once this matter was exposed, it would greatly affect the reputation of the 3 great clans. Thus, if they could get their hands on evidence, they could use it to blackmail Medicine City into selling low-quality medicinal ingredients. In short, Ouyang Ning Nuo's intention was to blackmail Medicine City instead of negotiating with them. Esteemed Wang Fei, please don't make it sound so unpleasant. Aren't we doing this for the sake of the patients? As long as the goal is noble, so what if the process is a little despicable? Ouyang Ning Nuo chuckled. So, you're willing to volunteer? Long Fei Yi asked with raised brows. As long as Your Highness Duke of Qin can take down Zhongsun Zilan, I won't take a single cent of Pill Fiend Pharmacy's business with Medicine City. Ouyang Ning Nuo earnestly declared. Who's the other boss of Sky Domain Black Market? Long Fei Yi asked. This one doesn't know. I'm only interested in Zhongsun Zilan's businesses. Ouyang Ning Nuo smiled. At this point, Ouyang Ning Nuo's true goal was finally revealed. Han Yunxi thought, if it weren't for Long Fei Yi and Gu Qishaw's stubbornness, who knows what kind of trap this guy would have set for me. Chapter 474. Not even 10%. Han Yunxi only laughed coldly in her heart. Ouyang Ning Nuo was speaking so generously, but Zhongsun Zilan's businesses were worth much more than medicinal ingredients. This fellow had swallowed up many large businesses over the years, so without a doubt, he was planning to loot a burning house this time by swallowing up half of Sky Domain Black Market. Such wild ambitions, no wonder he was the boss of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. But why was he so sure that Long Fei Yi could take down Zhongsun Zilan? Long Fei Yi was very interested as well. How will your lordship take down Zhongsun Zilan? Ouyang Ning Nuo didn't continue, but smiled. If your highness agrees, we'll write it down in black and white. It won't be too late for me to tell you then. As expected of a businessman, he's shrewd and cautious. Long Fei Yi wasn't a businessman, but he didn't lose to Ouyang Ning Nuo. He sat back down and asked, how do you plan to write it down in black and white? Ouyang Ning Nuo grew serious. This one will help your highness get rid of Zhongsun Zilan and facilitate the cooperation between Medicine City and Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Will your highness not interfere with any of Zhongsun Zilan's businesses as well? Han Yunxi was still thinking when Long Fei Yi agreed without a second thought. All right. As if guessing Han Yunxi's unease, Long Fei Yi gave her a reassuring look. Han Yunxi smiled. It's the most comfortable to discuss matters with His Highness. He's straightforward and direct. Han Yunxi was mocking Ouyang Ning Nuo for being sloppy, but everyone else noticed the words, His Highness. Even Long Fei Yi looked at her in surprise. Han Yunxi had blurted it out so quickly that she didn't realize what she'd just said. Gu Beiyue's eyes were filled with unhappiness and dark clouds. Gu Beiyue was like an invisible man as he drank his tea with his head bowed. Ouyang Ning Nuo was the most confused of all. He remembered that Han Yunxi had even revealed the chastity mark on her arm the last time they were on Fishery Island. This couple was clearly only in name, but not in reality. How long had it been since they last met? Why were they so lovey-dovey? Just now, Long Fei-yi rubbed Han Yunxi's hair and Han Yunxi held his hand. Now, they were actually showing off their love so directly. Seeing everyone's strange gazes, Han Yunxi also felt strange. She looked at Long Fei-yi in confusion. Long Fei-yi didn't say anything. He rubbed her bangs again. His gentle movements were filled with affection, and her dazed eyes were filled with innocence. This moment was peaceful and beautiful. Finally, Gu Qi-sha couldn't take it anymore and shouted towards the door, "Waiter, bring me the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone." Ouyang Ningnuo regained his composure, but Long Fei-yi didn't let go of her hair. Han Yunxi liked the gentleness of his large hands, so she allowed him to rub her hair. Gu Qi-sha's eyes flashed with hatred. "Long Fei-yi, you'd better not fall into my hands one day." Long Fei-yi's straightforwardness made Ouyang Ningnuo uneasy. However, he'd already thought about this condition, and there weren't any loopholes. After the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone were presented, Long Fei-yi and Ouyang Ningnuo signed the agreement on the spot. After Long Fei-yi stamped the agreement, he casually handed it to Han Yunxi for safekeeping. He asked coldly, "Ouyang Ningnuo, can you continue now?" Ouyang Ningnuo smiled mysteriously as he slowly poured Long Fei-yi a cup of tea. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, you won't lose out on this deal. This humble one has received reliable information that Zhangsun Zilan obtained a large batch of." Here, Ouyang Ningnuo lowered his voice to a whisper. "Gunpowder! Gunpowder!" Long Fei-yi's eyes flashed with astonishment, while Han Yunxi and the rest were stunned as well. After all, gunpowder could cause terrifying amounts of destruction in large quantities. All of Cloud Realm Continent's nations had strict control over gunpowder. All gunpowder factories were controlled by the military. Even the firecrackers used by civilians were limited in quantity by the military. Yet Zhangsun Zilan had a large batch of gunpowder, and it was all in Sky Domain Black Market. Sky Domain Black Market wasn't far from Tianning's capital. In the silence of the room, Ouyang Ningnuo was smiling faintly. He knew that the bargaining chip in his hands held a lot of weight. Where did Zhangsun Zilan get his hands on such a large batch of gunpowder? And who is he planning to sell it to? Han Yunxi muttered to herself, but she quickly realized that something was off. Zhangsun Zilan isn't selling this batch of gunpowder. Someone is using him to secretly transport the gunpowder to Tianning through the black market. And they're trying to get close to the capital. No wonder you're esteemed Wang Fei. You're so smart, Ouyang Ningnuo praised. Who is it? Han Yunxi asked. Without a doubt, this person's motives were frightening. Ouyang Ningnuo wanted to keep her in suspense, but Long Fei-yi only replied coldly, "The Chu clan. His Highness Duke of Qin is even smarter." He. Ouyang Ningnuo silently admired him. The Duke of Qin didn't seem to involve himself in the affairs of the imperial court or political factions, but he knew everything about Tianning's imperial court like the back of his hand. No one would have guessed Long Fei-yi's motives if he didn't say it out loud, but they weren't surprised when he did. In all three of Cloud Realm Continent's nations, gunpowder was controlled by the military. Tianning's three armies, General Mu's estate, the Bailey army, and the Ning clan troops stationed at the borders would never take such a huge risk to send gunpowder to Sky Domain Black Market. Between Northern Li and Western Zhou, Western Zhou's Chu clan was the most suspicious. Western Zhou's Chu clan was part of the military to begin with. Moreover, Chu Qingge had only recently arrived for a political marriage. She represented the Chu clan and coveted the throne. General Mu's estate not only controlled Tianning's foot soldiers, but young General Mu Qingwu also controlled the 100,000 imperial guards in the capital. It could be said that Mu Qingwu held all of Tianning's peace in his hands. Moreover, Mu Qingwu was already part of the Crown Prince's faction. If anything happened to Emperor Tianhui in the future, the various factions vying for the throne would start a coup d'état and take control of the capital. Naturally, Chu Qingge had to hold back a trick or two. Only she could come up with the idea of stockpiling gunpowder in the black market. Of course, both Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi could guess that Chu Qingge's brain couldn't have come up with such a plan. It looked like the Chu clan had made all sorts of arrangements for Chu Qingge's political marriage. Han Yunxi suddenly recalled Su Xiaoyu's affairs. She wondered if Long Feiyi had found out anything recently, but it wasn't appropriate to ask in front of outsiders. Your Highness Duke of Qin, this one's information is quite valuable, isn't it? Ouyang Ningnuo smiled. Long Fei nodded generously. It really is worth a lot of money. The powers of the black market were complex and involved a wide range of people. The imperial court had always tacitly approved of its existence and didn't want to come into direct conflict with it. But Emperor Tianhui wouldn't tolerate a secret stash of gunpowder that threatened the safety of the capital no matter how wide the implications were. He wouldn't leave the matter at that. Things were settled just like that. Ouyang Ningnuo's information couldn't be false. Han Yunxi and the rest were just lacking proof. After returning, Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi immediately prepared to head for Sky Domain Black Market. But before they left, they saw Gu Qisha sitting by the gates of the Duke of Qin's estate. Aren't you going to leave? Han Yunxi asked in bewilderment. Everyone had dispersed after leaving the tea house, so she assumed he'd gone back to Medicine Ghost Valley. Before Gu Qisha could answer, Long Feiyi pulled Han Yunxi onto the carriage. Gu Qisha mounted the horse and said, "This old man owns half of Pill Fiend Pharmacy, so of course I have to take care of its business." Did Han Yunxi gain or lose by taking half of Medicine Ghost Valley? Long Feiyi's eyes flickered with displeasure, but he didn't say a word. Ever since their last trip to Medicine Ghost Valley, he'd grown more tolerant of Gu Qisha. Han Yunxi could tell, but she still didn't understand this man. Whenever he became tolerant of someone or something, it meant he was plotting something. Of course, she was an exception. Just like that, Gu Qisha chased after Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi's carriage out of the city. After passing through the fields outside the city, the carriage had just entered the forest when the sounds of an intense battle could be heard. When it came to meddling in other people's business, Long Feiyi and Gu Qisha had something in common. Neither of them liked to meddle in other people's business, so even though the sound of battle was very close, they pretended not to hear it and continued forward. But who knew that not long after, a clear voice would ring out from behind them. "You 5 big men are bullying a weak woman like me. Aren't you ashamed? If you have the ability, come one by one and fight me one-on-one." Han Yunxi was alarmed. "Stop the carriage! Stop the carriage!" Gu Qisha also stopped his horse and turned around to look. He saw a petite figure roll out of the forest and onto the road, followed by 5 burly men. Each of them held a large saber in their hands, and they were dressed like bandits. They quickly surrounded the woman, and one of them laughed lecherously. One by one. "All right, brothers, who's going to take her first?" "Pay!" "Disgusting!" The woman spat saliva all over the burly man's face. The burly man angrily swung his saber at her, and the other 4 men followed suit. Although the 5 brothers looked burly, their movements were not clumsy at all. Their sabers were not slashing randomly either, but they had their own set of moves. It was obvious that their martial arts were not bad. The woman also knew some martial arts, but she was no match for the 5 of them at once. After a few moves, she could only dodge and did not even have the chance to take the initiative to attack. Soon, the encirclement became smaller and smaller, and the woman had nowhere to run. On the other side, Long Feiyi sat in his carriage and lifted the curtain, watching with a cold face. Gu Qixia was still sitting on his horse, watching from the sidelines. Only Han Yunqi was anxious, very anxious. This was because the woman was none other than Mu Ling. Your Highness, swords have no eyes. Hurry up and save her. Han Yunqi anxiously tugged at Long Fei Ye's sleeve. Long Fei Ye only had 2 impressions of Mu Ling. The first was when she pushed Han Yunqi in the heaven pit, and the second was when she stopped the carriage and scolded Han Yunqi. He really did not want to save her. Seeing Han Yunqi's anxious expression, Gu Qixia was amused. Little girl, say something nice to me, and I'll go save her. How about it? Han Yunqi rolled her eyes at him. Just as she was about to continue begging Long Fei Yi, Mu Ling, who was not far away, had been cornered and was paralyzed on the ground. Han Yunqi was quick-witted. Only then did she remember that she had hidden weapons. She immediately activated her pear blossom teardrop rain and shot out several golden needles, all of which hit the bandits' vital points. Seeing the bandits fall one by one, Mu Ling hurriedly dodged the falling sabers. Only then did she notice that there were people around her, and she looked over suspiciously. Han Yunqi. She was surprised, but at the same time, she saw Gu Qixia standing beside her. Han Yunqi's face was full of disdain. Coldly, she said, "So it's you. If I'd known earlier, I wouldn't have saved her." She immediately got into the carriage. She did not know the relationship between her and Mu Ling, but she could not leave her in the lurch. Chapter 475. Mu Ling had been embarrassed that Han Yunqi had saved her. Now that she heard Han Yunqi's words, she flew into a rage out of humiliation. Who told you to save her? Meddling in other people's business. Han Yunqi had more important matters to attend to, so she couldn't be bothered to argue with her. But Mu Ling, once again blocked the carriage's path and refused to let them go. Gu Qixia silently picked up the hidden dart in his hand and began to play with his bony fingers. He didn't seem to be in a rush to leave either. But Long Fei Ye's patience was limited. He ordered the driver in a low voice, "Why aren't you leaving yet?" His angry voice was loud enough for Mu Ling, to hear. She had always feared Long Fei Yi from the bottom of her heart, so she grew anxious. "Wait a minute, Han Yunqi. I only want to ask you one thing. I'll say it one last time. We weren't the ones who imprisoned Mute Granny." Han Yunqi grew angry as well. Mu Ling stared at her for a long time before saying faintly, "Do you know where my Chi brother is?" She couldn't even afford to pay for her room, so she came to the mountains to pick medicinal herbs. She hoped that she could find some herbs to exchange for some money at the medicine hall. Who would have thought that not only would she not find any valuable herbs, but she would also encounter some bandits. Although there were wild medicinal ingredients everywhere, they weren't worth much. A whole basket of them wasn't even enough to pay for half a day's rent. After all, the inn she was staying at was the most expensive in Tianning's capital city. Leaving aside the silver, her father had sent her 2 letters yesterday and the day before yesterday, both urging her to go home. His attitude was much tougher than before. If Chi brother still didn't show up, she wouldn't know what to do. She had steeled her heart to run away from home and wander the world, but the person who was supposed to accompany her still hadn't shown up. When Han Yunqi saw the disappointment in Mu Ling's eyes, she felt a pang of heartache. She even wondered if her brain had gone haywire. Why was she suddenly feeling sorry for this naughty girl who'd pushed her and cursed her? Well, she was also looking for Gu. Only the heavens knew where that demon had run off to. "Your Chi brother is not familiar with me." "You asked the wrong person," Han Yunqi said angrily. Gu Qixia's fingers stiffened when he heard this, but he quickly regained his composure and turned his head away, pretending that he hadn't heard anything. Mu Ling was angry. Chi brother is so good to you, and you say you don't know him well. How can you do this? Han Yunxi felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't dare to imagine Long Fei Ye's expression. This stinky girl was simply looking for trouble with Gu. Gu Qishao had treated her rather well, but not as well as Mu Linger's so-called good. He'd been flippant as soon as they met and spouted frivolous lies. Leaving aside a married woman like her, he couldn't even treat an unmarried woman like this. I really don't know him well, and I don't know where he is. Get out of my way. Han Yunxi said bluntly. Mu Ling suddenly wanted to tell Han Yunxi that Chi brother was the one who first became suspicious about Mute Granny. However, she felt that it was inappropriate and could only helplessly back away. Han Yunxi was about to return to the carriage when she suddenly stopped and said provocatively, Mu Ling, I heard that you are the most talented pharmacist in the history of Medicine City. Do you dare to challenge my pill fiend pharmacy? Challenge? Inside the carriage, Long Fei and Gu Qisha were both puzzled. What's the challenge? However, Mu Ling's main point was the word dare. Her biggest weakness was that she couldn't stand being provoked. What do you want to challenge? Just say it, she proudly replied. Han Yunxi was secretly delighted. She originally wanted to find Gu to persuade this girl to come to Pill Fiend Pharmacy, but it seemed that today's situation was better than waiting for Gu to come knocking on her door. She might as well find Mu Ling herself. If she had directly brought this up with Mu Ling, the girl might have rejected her and even insulted her. However, the result would be different if she provoked her. Han Yunxi pretended to be disdainful. Your skills are only a so-so, but your tone is quite big. Mu Ling immediately became angry. Han Yunxi, you just want me to challenge you. You haven't even seen me make medicine, so what right do you have to judge me so casually? Mu Ling wasn't arrogant, but she hated this kind of slander. Alright. Then on the next opening day of Pill Fiend Pharmacy, come and challenge His Excellency Pill Fiend and let me see. Everyone present was stunned by Han Yunxi's words, but she continued with a smile, if you win, you can name any conditions you want. If you lose, you can name any conditions you want. In any case, I just want to see it for myself. What? You want me to challenge His Excellency Pill Fiend? Mu Ling finally caught the crux of the matter. Inside the carriage, Long Fei Ye's lips curled into a beautiful smile, but Gu Qisha couldn't help but snicker. Han Yunxi, oh Han Yunxi, you really are the worst. Mu Ling was a genius pharmacist in Medicine City. Her talent was extraordinary, and her future was limitless. However, she couldn't be compared to Gu Qisha. If it weren't for the fact that Gu Qisha was expelled from Medical City and had a bad reputation for hoarding medicine and not selling it, he would have been revered as a grandmaster long ago. Yes, I want to challenge His Excellency Pill Fiend. Han Yunxi was quite serious. Mu Ling was about to speak when Gu Qisha laughed even louder. You have guts. This daddy likes it. Girl, up until now, aside from Han Yunxi, no one has dared to challenge this daddy. You're the only one. Mu Ling wanted to cry, but no tears came out. How did things turn out like this? No matter how arrogant she was, she still wouldn't dare to challenge His Excellency Pill Fiend. If news of this got out, no one would admire her courage. They would only laugh at her for overestimating herself. Seeing Mu Ling's awkward expression, Han Yunxi's lips curled into a mocking smile. His Excellency Pill Fiend, I think we should just forget about it. This joke has gone too far. Joke? This daddy thinks she's serious. How boring. Gu Qisha was even more disdainful. The words grated on Mu Linger's ears. She didn't know where she found the courage to agree. All right. I'll definitely go. Losing wasn't shameful, but not daring to go was the most shameful thing. All right, we'll wait. Han Yunxi was overjoyed. Mu Ling was finally willing to open the way. Only after Han Yunxi had entered the carriage did she say, Han Yunxi, if you see Qi brother, please pass a message to him. Tell him that I'm looking for him. Han Yunxi originally didn't plan to reply, but in the end, she couldn't bear to and replied, all right. She sighed inwardly. She didn't know if Mu Ling falling for Gu was a blessing or a curse. Was it fate or a debt? Was it right or wrong? When it came to feelings, everyone was willing. How could there be such a thing as right or wrong? The carriage gradually moved further and further away, gradually picking up speed. Long Fei Yi picked up the scroll again. However, not long after, he asked, I heard from the hidden guards that Gu came to the residence to look for you. Han Yunxi was shocked. Sure enough, nothing in the residence could escape this guy's eyes. Yes, he's a guest. She admitted honestly. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi didn't get angry. He asked again, why did he look for you? Han Yunxi was puzzled. Long Fei Yi had previously warned that if he saw her hanging out with Gu again, he would break Gu's legs. Judging from the current situation, this guy seemed to have forgotten what he said. Still, she's hanging out with Gu Qishao, and Gu Qishao's a guest were two different things. They couldn't be lumped together. Han Yunxi was wishful thinking on her part. Long Fei was probably quite reasonable in this regard. Thus, she answered honestly, send something. Although Long Fei Yi didn't get angry, he kept asking questions. What is it? Han Yunxi smiled, it's a lobster. That guy probably went to Yuzhou Island too. Did you accept it? No. Han Yunxi actually wanted to say that her stomach still twitched when she heard about lobster. That's it. He also sent a can of tea leaves, Red South Mountain. Is it authentic? I don't know. Heavenly Fragrance Tea House has been closed for almost 2 years. Where did he get Red South Mountain? He has tea seeds. He said he planted them somewhere else. Long Fei Yi nodded thoughtfully and asked again, why did he send you lobster and tea leaves for no reason? According to Gu, the lobster was to nourish her body. As for the tea leaves, it was purely a misunderstanding. How should Han Yunxi answer this question? One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. It turns out that he has something to ask of your highness, so he came to curry favor with me. I didn't accept the lobster and Red South Mountain. Han Yunxi was obviously saying nice things and saying careless words, but she knew clearly in her heart. After all, she was a woman. She still had the sensitivity that a woman should have. Therefore, she always rejected Gu and never accepted anything that Gu gave her. Long Fei Yi looked at Han Yunxi. His eyes were as dark as midnight, as if he could see through her. Han Yunxi really didn't like to discuss this with Long Fei Yi. It was awkward no matter how she said it. Fortunately, Long Fei Yi didn't ask any more questions. He stretched out his big hand and pulled Han Yunxi into his arms. Holding her, he continued to read his book. Han Yunxi decided to sleep. When they arrived at the black market, who knew if she would still be able to sleep? Not long after, dark clouds gathered in the sky. Thunder rumbled and the wind blew, followed by rain. No matter how fast the four-wheeled carriage traveled, it was still very stable. Han Yunxi snuggled up in Long Fei Ye's arms. Surrounded by his unique scent and sense of security, she slept very soundly. Let alone a storm, even if the sky collapsed, she wouldn't be disturbed. Long Fei Ye's gaze had unknowingly shifted from his book to Han Yunxi's face. He silently looked at her for a while before unconsciously putting down his book. He gently lifted her scattered hair and carefully tucked her bangs away, then quietly planted a kiss on her forehead. Inside the carriage, it was quiet and warm. Outside, the wind and rain were getting heavier. Gu Qixia, who was chasing after them on horseback, had long been drenched. He and his horse were both faster than Long Fei Ye's carriage. Moreover, he could find a place to hide from the rain and chase after Long Fei Yi after the rain passed. It wasn't as if he didn't know the way to the black market. However, he didn't speed up or change his route. He continued to follow behind the carriage, allowing the rain to soak him thoroughly. The rain became heavier and heavier. The distant figure seemed to be washed away by the rain and gradually became blurry. However, no matter how heavy the rain was, it could never wash away the stubbornness and persistence of that figure. After the rain stopped, it was already late at night. Han Yunxi groggily woke up and glanced at Long Fei Yi. Seeing that he was leaning against a high pillow, she didn't dare to move. However, Long Fei Yi sensed that she was awake. He glanced at her and changed his position to make her more comfortable before closing his eyes and continuing to sleep. Is this how it feels to sleep together? Han Yunxi suddenly wished that the sky would never brighten. Of course, the sky would eventually brighten. After that, they would arrive at the black market. Note to readers, follow the official WeChat account. There are wonderful book reviews every day. WeChat ID, Tien Kexia Dufi. Chapter 476. They'd arrived at the black market. How was Long Fei Yi planning to deal with Zhangsun Zilan? The three of them entered the black market and stopped at Wu Shu's grain store. When the informants of the Wu clan saw Han Yunxi, they all gathered around to take a look. After all, Long Fei Ye's subordinates in the black market had all admired and worshipped their mistress ever since the incident at the imperial uncle's estate. How they hoped that one day, their mistress would come to the black market and lead them to do something big. With their mistress's ability to trick people, they would definitely become a big force in the black market of the Tianyu domain within a year and a half. Of course, when they reached the backyard, this group of people consciously stopped and didn't dare to follow them in. Only Uncle Wu followed. As soon as Long Fei Yi sat down, Wu Shu presented him with a stack of documents. It detailed all of Zhangsun Zilan's businesses in the black market, including his stores, warehouses, and residences. Han Yunxi was secretly alarmed. She never expected that Long Fei Ye's men in the black market would be able to dig up so much information as soon as Ouyang Ningnua gave them the information. Most likely, this fellow knew more about the black market than they'd imagined. Long Fei Yi looked at the documents intently, but Gu Qixia couldn't sit still. Long Fei Yi, what are your plans? Tell this old man. Long Fei Yi ignored him, but Han Yunxi wanted to ask him the same question. Although she'd come with Long Fei Yi, she wasn't sure how he was going to deal with Zhangsun Zilan. Ouyang Ningnua had given them enough clues, but this wasn't an easy task. If evidence of Medicine City and Zhangsun Zilan's collusion reached the hands of others, it would be a blow to Medicine City's reputation and Zhangsun Zilan's reputation. As long as this matter was made public, Zhangsun Zilan's businesses would be ruined. Who would dare to do business with someone who would betray their partners? Thus, there was only one way to force Zhangsun Zilan to hand over the evidence. That was to threaten him with evidence of smuggling gunpowder. Here was the crux of the matter. The matter of gunpowder was 100 times more serious than the matter of medicinal ingredients. This was an enemy of Tianning's imperial clan. Zhangsun Zilan definitely would not easily leave behind any evidence that could be used against him. Even if they found it, Zhangsun Zilan might not admit it. After all, this was a black market. They couldn't possibly bring a large group of soldiers here to search, could they? Moreover, if the Long Fei Yi wanted to use this chance to get rid of Chu Qingge as the empress candidate, he couldn't beat the grass and startle the snake. He'd have to find some evidence to present to Emperor Tianhui first. Han Yunxi carefully considered the matter. The more she thought, the more she felt that they shouldn't have come to the black markets so early. Perhaps it'd be easier to start with Chu Qingge instead. After Long Feiyi finished reading the information, he casually tossed it to Gu Qisha. Take a look and see which of these places are most likely to hide gunpowder. What are you trying to do? Gu Qisha asked in confusion. Look for gunpowder, Long Feiyi said. Han Yunxi and Gu Qisha were both surprised and asked in unison, and then? Let's talk after we find him. Long Feiyi said indifferently. That's the stupidest way to do it. Even if you find him, Zhangsun Zilin won't admit it. Gu Qisha said, before adding kindly, moreover, you'll lose a good chance to deal with the Chu clan. How about we make a bet? Long Feiyi asked with interest. What are we betting on? Gu Qisha was interested as well. Let's bet on Zhangsun Zilin, Long Feiyi said. And the stakes? Gu Qisha asked next. If your lordship wins, all the medicinal ingredients in your courtyard will go to Han Yunxi. If your lordship loses, you can do whatever you want. Han Yunxi couldn't help but laugh at Long Feiyi's words. But Gu Qisha only chuckled and said, I'm not betting. Gu Qisha wasn't as easy to goad as Mu Ling, nor was he as stupid as Mu Ling. He didn't know anything about the black markets, so he wouldn't bet against Long Feiyi just for the sake of winning. Why would this guy take the initiative to make a bet if he wasn't completely confident? Han Yunxi chuckled. Long Feiyi's lips curled into a sneer, but Gu Qisha continued to hum a strange tune as he flipped through the documents. He looked like he wasn't paying much attention, but after a while, he was still able to accurately pick out a few suitable places to hide gunpowder. He asked suspiciously, Long Feiyi, are you planning to investigate them one by one? Do you have a better idea? Long Feiyi asked. Gu Qisha didn't need to think about it, because even if he did, he didn't have one. He stood up and stretched lazily. Take your time, then. I'm going to catch up on some sleep. Where's the best room you have? Half of Pill Fiend Pharmacy belongs to you. If you want to stand by and do nothing, turn right when you leave. I won't be seeing you out. Long Feiyi said. Turning right was the way to leave the black market. Gu Qisha shrugged resentfully. Fine, I'll look for them one by one with you. That should be fine, right? Han Yunxi didn't understand. Long Feiyi had always been a loner and was straightforward in his dealings. This time, however, he seemed to be deliberately dragging Gu Qisha into this. Could this guy have some other motive? The matter with Pill Fiend Pharmacy has already been settled, so what other motive could he have? Han Yunxi couldn't figure it out, so she remained silent. She was about to follow him when Long Feiyi told her to stay in the grain store. Your Highness. Han Yunxi panicked. You won't be able to help with a secret investigation, Long Feiyi said indifferently. Girl, he's saying that you'll only be a burden if you go. You don't even know how to climb over a wall, right? Gu Qisha laughed. Han Yunxi glared fiercely at him. Gu Qisha was amused. If that's not what he meant, then what is he trying to say? Han Yunxi was furious, but she couldn't refute him. Long Feiyi and Gu Qisha were going on a secret investigation. Bringing her along would indeed be very troublesome. She knew her place very well. Your Highness, I'll be waiting for your good news. Long Feiyi lovingly stroked her bangs and gently said, Be good. You don't have to climb over a wall. Go and rest. The dark clouds in Han Yunxi's eyes dissipated. So there's only a difference between disdain and pampering. So what if I don't know martial arts? As long as I have someone to protect me. Seeing Gu Qisha staring at her, Han Yunxi purposely stretched her back lazily. Her languid and leisurely posture was enough to make anyone who couldn't sleep envious and jealous. After a sleepless night, Gu Qixu's eyes were filled with doting love. He wanted nothing more than for this girl to eat and sleep well and grow fat. How could he really let her be a burden? Just like that, Long Feiyi and Gu Qixu left the house, leaving Han Yunxi alone at the Wu clan's grain store. Her laziness was nothing more than an act. As soon as Long Feiyi and Gu Qixu left, she carefully flipped through the documents and wondered if there was anything she could do to help. At this moment, a rustling sound came from her wide sleeves. What's that? Han Yunxi quickly grabbed it. Cheap! Lil Thing immediately shrieked. Mama Yunxi, you can't do this. You're squeezing my insides out. Han Yunxi pulled Lil Thing out and dangled it in the air. When did you follow us here? I thought you weren't coming back. Lil Thing ran to Gu Beiyue's place every 2 to 3 days. Most of the time, it wouldn't show up for days, so she'd almost forgotten she had such a poison beast. Lil Thing had no idea what Han Yunxi was talking about. It waved its paws wildly as it tried to act cute. It only hoped that Mama Yunxi would put it down quickly. But Han Yunxi didn't let it go. Instead, she looked at it with interest, her smile growing wider and wider. She'd thought of a good idea. Lil Thing, I'll give you a chance to curry favor with His Highness Duke of Qin. Do you want it? Han Yunxi asked seriously. Cheap, cheap. Lil Thing replied seriously as well. Actually, it had no idea what Mama Yunxi was talking about. Han Yunxi quickly took out a medicine from her medical pouch. Sulfur. That's right, sulfur was a chemical substance that could be used to make medicine or poison. Most importantly, sulfur was an important component of gunpowder. As soon as she took it out, Lil Thing covered its mouth with its paws. So smelly. Seeing this, Han Yunxi was amused. She placed the sulfur in front of Lil Thing and said, "Take a good sniff. Gunpowder has this smell as well." Lil Thing wasn't half an animal. Although it couldn't understand human speech, it was very perceptive. Seeing Han Yunxi's actions, it immediately understood that Mama Yunxi wanted it to find something by smelling. Its nose was even sharper than a canine's. Any poison within a 1 li radius wouldn't be able to escape its nose. As for this kind of extremely pungent smell, it was confident that it could find it. The little thing grabbed the small piece of sulfur and sniffed it seriously. It didn't know why, but the more it sniffed, the less smelly it felt. It was even a little addicted and almost ate the sulfur. Fortunately, Han Yunxi stopped it in time. You're looking to die. Sulfur wasn't medicine or poison on its own. It had to be mixed with other things to create both effects. Heaven knows what the consequences would be if it ate it alone. Lil Thing gave an aggrieved squeak. It wasn't a glutton, but it hadn't eaten anything good in ages. Recently, it had given all the nourishing medicines it found to Imperial Physician Gu. As for poisons, Mama Yunxi's weren't to its liking. Its body hadn't recovered yet, and its blood hadn't recovered its detoxification properties yet. Lil Thing let go of the sulfur and scuttled to the windowsill. It didn't run out immediately, but stared unblinkingly at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi saw through it at a glance. Without a choice, she took out an extremely rare poison from her medical pouch. Here, be a picky eater. As soon as Lil Thing smelled the delicious food, it pounced on it and wolfed it down. It knew Mama Yunxi was hiding something good. How could it not loot a burning house? Seeing Lil Thing eat like this, Han Yunxi was both angry and amused. She couldn't bear to take out another rare poison. Here, eat until you're full. The black market's huge, there'll be plenty for you to run around. Lil Thing turned around and opened its mouth wide, swallowing the poison in one gulp. If she wasn't hallucinating, Then Lil Thing's mouth had been wider than its body. Frightened, Han Yunxi looked at her hand to make sure it was still there before she relaxed. The little thing grinned at her and quickly flew out of the window to look for the smell of sulfur. Naturally, Han Yunxi wouldn't follow it. Even if she wanted to, she didn't have the strength. She'd long seen Lil Thing's speed for herself. She could only sit there and wait with a clear conscience. She wasn't sure if Long Fei Yi and Gu Qixia would find the gunpowder first, or if Lil Thing would come back to give her a surprise. If someone made a bet with her this time, she wasn't sure she'd win. But what would the result be? Chapter 477. In less than half a day, Long Fei Yi and Gu Qixia had scoured the warehouses behind several large markets. Unfortunately, they couldn't even smell the slightest bit of gunpowder, let alone find a large quantity of it. The two of them hadn't spoken a word since they left the Wu family's grain store. They traveled together for the entire journey, but when they reached a warehouse, they split up and left at the same time. Neither of them spoke a word as they both knew that the other had not found anything. At this time, they had snuck into another large warehouse and were in the same room. They split up to search for the secret rooms. After spending a lot of time, they still found nothing. The two of them looked at each other, then tacitly left. Gu Qixia leaped onto the wall as soon as he left. Long Fei Yi's martial arts were far superior to his, but he was always one step slower. Along the way, Long Fei Yi kept an eye on Gu Qixia's movements. He observed his qigong, the strength of his legs, and the way he leaped onto roofs and vaulted over walls. He had sparred with Gu Qixia a few times before, but he hadn't paid much attention to his movements. Now, however, he was especially attentive. After observing carefully, Long Fei Yi leaped into the air and landed on the roof. "Cold," he said, "the next warehouse is this way. Let's split up. Otherwise, we won't find anything even if we search for 3 days and 3 nights. Gu Qixia replied unhappily. In reality, he hadn't planned to search seriously when he came out with Long Fei Yi. The reason why he hadn't suggested splitting up from the start was because he wanted to slack off with Long Fei Yi. After all, he didn't need to worry about anything else as long as he followed him. But now, he realized that foolishly following him was tiring. He decided to sneak back to catch up on some sleep. If he couldn't fall asleep, he could still drink tea and chat with Han Yunxi. This prince will head west. I'll leave the east area to you, Long Fei Yi said. After half a day, he had a rough idea of Gu Qixia's skills. He was too lazy to mix around with him. Splitting up would indeed save him a lot of time. Gu Qixia didn't even reply, but simply turned to leave. Long Fei watched his retreating form as a mocking smile rose to his lips. He seemed to have realized something. He continued to head west and was about to sneak into a hidden warehouse when he caught a glimpse of a familiar white figure. That figure was faster than him and had snuck in before him. Why would they meet here? Bewildered, Long Fei silently followed suit. But he hadn't even gotten close when the white figure abruptly stopped in its tracks. Long Fei Yi did not stop. In a flash, he appeared in front of the white figure and said coldly, "Why are you here?" Other than Little Thing, what else could the white shadow be? It was no longer a white shadow, but a real white ball. In front of Long Fei Yi, there wasn't a moment when it wouldn't explode. It didn't know what Daddy Long was talking about. It only felt that he was terrifying. It began to retreat timidly. Long Fei Yi was indeed very fierce. Since the little thing appeared here, perhaps Han Yunxi was also nearby. This restless woman, didn't he tell her to stay in the grain store obediently? How dare he sneak into the warehouse of the black market with only a few hidden weapons and no martial arts? If they were caught, they wouldn't even know how they died. Where's Han Yunxi? Long Fei Yi asked. Lil Thing was already afraid. After being yelled at, it was so scared that it didn't care about anything else. It turned around and ran for its life. Although it couldn't die, it couldn't help but worry whenever it was alone with Daddy Long. It was afraid that Daddy Long would secretly kill it one day behind Mama Yunqi's back. Seeing Lil Thing run, Long Fei Yi assumed it was looking for Han Yunqi and immediately chased after it. Lil Thing grew even more afraid and ran for its life. It had no idea what Daddy Long wanted to do. Besides that time in Medicine City, Daddy Long had never chased after it. Long Fei Yi chased after Lil Thing until they reached the back courtyard of Wu Shu's grain store. He stopped abruptly, suddenly realizing that Han Yunqi hadn't left the house at all. Lil Thing leapt onto the tall wall and fell into the courtyard without looking back. It hadn't planned to come back, but Daddy Long had chased it so closely that it could only seek Mama Yunqi's protection. It really couldn't figure it out. Mama Yunqi was so smart, but why did she fancy a fiend like Daddy Long? Why wasn't Mama Yunqi with its gentleman? If Mama Yunqi and the gentleman were together, its world would be perfect. Long Fei Yi was about to turn and leave when he suddenly turned back. It wasn't clear whether that woman was resting or doing something else. Han Yunqi was currently researching Beauty's Tears and Perplexing Butterfly Illusion in her room. Although Long Fei Yi hadn't asked her about it recently, she'd take out the two poisons whenever she had time to study them. She'd either mix them with other poisons or try all sorts of methods to extract the ingredients. Of course, Han Yunqi was also keeping an eye on the poison pond in her detox system. Last time, the detox system had leveled up because of the pond and gained the ability to nurture poisons and create antidotes on its own. When she poisoned Jun Yixia, the pond had only produced a handful of poisons. Moreover, she hadn't even created an antidote yet. But now she could produce 10 mature poisons. Right now, Han Yunqi had a bold idea. She wanted to take out the pond water and mix it with Perplexing Butterfly Illusion and Beauty's Tears. She wanted to see if it was the two poisons that swallowed the pond water, or if it was the poison pond water that swallowed the poisons. One had to know that there was also a situation of black eating black when it came to poisons. Whoever had a stronger poison would often eat the weaker poison to increase their own toxicity. Han Yunqi took out the poison pond water, along with some Perplexing Butterfly Illusion and a bit of Beauty's Tears. She tossed them separately into the pond water and was about to observe when Lil Thing suddenly flew in through the window and slammed into her back. Ah! The two bottles of poison in Han Yunqi's hands almost flew out. Fortunately, she held on tight. Lil Thing didn't even care about the poison. It grabbed Han Yunqi's clothes and climbed onto her shoulder. It slid down her arm like a slide and hurriedly hid in her sleeve. What's up with this little guy? Just as Han Yunqi was puzzled, someone knocked on the door. Who is it? She asked. Unfortunately, the person outside didn't make a sound and kept knocking. Strange. None of Uncle Wu's subordinates would dare to do this. Who's at the door? Han Yunqi looked at the two bottles of poison. Seeing that the poison didn't fuse and didn't react, she casually put the bottles into her medical pouch. She didn't make a sound and walked to the door. She held Pear Blossom Teardrop Rain and was on guard. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking continued. Han Yunqi's lips curled into a cold smile, but she didn't make a sound. Very soon, the person outside stopped knocking on the door and left without a sound. Han Yunqi grew more suspicious as she grew more guarded. She vigilantly looked at the windows on both sides. One of the windows was tightly shut, while the other had been knocked open by Lil Thing. Han Yunqi was vigilantly looking at the open window. Who knew that a few golden needles suddenly shot into the crack of the door? She completely didn't notice it until the golden needles brushed past her cheek and broke the teacup on the table. She was shocked. Almost at the same time, Long Fei Ye's voice came from outside the door. Open the door. It's him. Han Yunxi was stunned. The moment the door opened, she saw Long Fei Yi standing outside. Long Fei Yi looked at her and was somewhat helpless. This vigilance of yours, although there were shadow guards protecting her, but if she met with an expert, the shadow guards might not be able to stop him. And how could he always stay by her side? Long Fei began to consider whether or not to teach this woman martial arts. He hadn't taught her in the past because he thought she was a good-for-nothing in martial arts, but now it seemed like he had to find a chance for her to start learning martial arts. All right, Han Yunxi also admitted that her vigilance was very poor. But she had no choice. Why has your highness returned? Have you found the gunpowder? I met Lil Thing and chased it back to take a look. If you're not tired, let's go look for it together. Long Fei Yi said indifferently. Han Yunxi was overjoyed. Really? Let's go. Long Fei Yi turned around and left. Was it because Long Fei Yi saw that Han Yunxi wanted to follow him or because he liked to let Han Yunxi follow him? Only he himself knew. In any case, Han Yunxi was happily led away by Long Fei Yi. By the time Gu Qisha returned, they were already far away. Gu Qisha couldn't find them in the courtyard and asked everyone in the inn, but no one could give him an answer. Gu Qisha wanted to go to sleep, but when he lay down, he couldn't. What a tragedy. When she found out that Long Fei Yi and Long Fei Yi hadn't found any clues, Han Yunxi forcefully pulled Lil Thing out of her sleeve and hung it in front of Long Fei Yi. Your Highness, it has a way. Han Yunxi smiled mischievously, but Lil Thing began to cry. Squeak, squeak, squeak. What way? Long Fei Yi slapped Han Yunxi's hand away. Don't you think it's dirty? How many times have I told you not to keep this thing on you? Even now, Long Fei Yi still didn't think much of Lil Thing. It wasn't because he looked down on its abilities, but because he really didn't like furry little animals like Lil Thing. Lil Thing fell to the ground and hid by Han Yunxi's feet, feeling wronged and terrified. Han Yunxi squatted down and snorted. Lil Thing, go find the gunpowder and show it to him. As she spoke, she took out some sulfur for Lil Thing to sniff. Lil Thing seemed to have been emboldened by Han Yunxi, because Lil Thing actually leaped onto her shoulder and stuck out its tongue at Long Fei Yi before fleeing. Your Highness, hurry and chase after it. It'll find it. Han Yunxi said anxiously. Could Long Fei Yi refuse? Obviously not. For the third time, the Great Duke of Qin chased a little squirrel through the streets and alleys, leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls. Lil Thing seemed to be holding a grudge this time. It purposely took the most difficult paths and even went through the dog hole that it disdained the most. It made it seem as if Long Fei Yi would follow suit. Long Fei Yi flew over the high wall with a light tap of his foot. The dog hole had nothing to do with him. Han Yunxi watched, truly anxious for Lil Thing's intelligence. Just as Long Fei Yi was about to lose his patience, Lil Thing suddenly braked, turned around, and squeaked at Han Yunxi. Found it. Han Yunxi was overjoyed. Lil Thing nodded furiously and turned to enter a restaurant. This restaurant was the only one in the black market, and it was listed in Long Fei Yi's information. It was just that he hadn't had time to come over yet. Long Fei Yi led Han Yunxi to catch up with Lil Thing. They went all the way to the wine cellar in the back courtyard of the restaurant. As soon as they reached the entrance, they were greeted by the strong smell of alcohol. They avoided the manservants in the courtyard and entered through the window at the back. They saw that the wine cellar was filled to the brim with wine jars, leaving only a small path for them to walk through. Lil Thing was like an arrow that left the bow. It darted into the depths of the cellar and scratched the ground incessantly. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi chased after it and quickly discovered that there was an entrance to the cellar. However, after they entered the cellar, they saw that it was still filled with wine. Where was the gunpowder? Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi both looked at Lil Thing. Lil Thing ran headfirst into the nearest wine jar and actually smashed it into pieces. Then, Chapter 478. Afterwards, gunpowder as black as coal spilled out of the jug to scatter on the ground. They'd found the gunpowder, hidden in the wine jug in the underground cellar. Han Yunxi was thrilled and immediately took out a bottle of poison to reward Lil Thing. Beautifully done, you're better than both of them. Lil Thing seemed to understand, because it held the bottle of poison in its hands and skipped around happily. Long Fei Yi only pretended not to hear. Cold, he said, Zhangsun Zilin is quite smart. He used alcohol to cover up the smell of gunpowder. It's stored in a separate altar, and these porcelain jugs are fireproof. Your Highness, this is the safest place, but also the most dangerous place. It's filled with wine. If it catches fire and explodes, the consequences will be unthinkable. Han Yunxi said seriously. Once the gunpowder exploded, the wine jug above would shatter. Under the influence of alcohol, both the explosion and the fire would multiply. Long Fei Yi nodded with interest. He walked over and began to count the number of jugs as if calculating something. Your Highness, what should we do now? Han Yunxi asked. They'd found the gunpowder, but now came the real problem. How were they supposed to threaten Zhangsun Zilin? Directly threaten Zhangsun Zilin and force him to hand over evidence of his secret dealings with Medicine City. Otherwise, they'd expose the matter of the gunpowder. Under normal circumstances, such a threat would be effective. But this was the black market, and Zhangsun Zilin was half its head. How could he be threatened so easily? Most likely, they'd beat the grass and startle the snake instead. Heaven knows how much power Zhangsun Zilin had in the black market. If they really threatened him, they might never be able to walk out of the black market's gates. Thus, they'd have to take their time and think things over carefully. Your Highness, why don't we just leave the matter to Tianhui? Then extend an olive branch to Zhangsun Zilin. Han Yunxi asked thoughtfully. The reason the black market had existed for so long without being suppressed by the imperial court wasn't because the court feared its power, but because it had a wide range of connections behind it. If the imperial court tried to suppress it, they'd be smashing their own feet with a rock. Thus, the imperial court had always turned a blind eye. As long as the black markets didn't do anything too outrageous, Emperor Tianhui wouldn't make trouble for them. But things were different when it came to gunpowder. It was a direct threat to the capital and imperial power. As soon as Emperor Tianhui found out, his first thought would be to destroy the entire Sky Domain black market. Thus, as long as Long Fei Yi reported the news to Emperor Tianhui, the emperor would definitely exterminate Zhangsun Zilin. At that time, Zhangsun Zilin would have no way out. Long Fei Yi would then extend an olive branch. As long as Zhangsun Zilin handed over evidence of his secret dealings with Medicine City, the Duke of Qin would guarantee his life. Han Yunxi thought for a moment, then added, Your Highness, we can let Zhangsun Zilin expose the Chu family first, then save him. This way, we can kill two birds with one stone. Rather than using gunpowder to threaten Zhangsun Zilin, he might as well use his life to threaten him. It had to be said that Han Yunxi was becoming more and more skillful. Still, Long Fei Yi only gave her a one-word evaluation. An unnecessary move. Han Yunxi gave a start. Your Highness has a better idea. Aside from blowing things up and getting the imperial court involved, Han Yunxi couldn't think of a more complete and safe plan. Long Fei Yi didn't reply, but kept walking inside. He pulled out a few jugs of wine and opened them up for inspection, only to discover that they were all filled with gunpowder. After walking around in a circle, Long Fei-yi had a good idea of how much gunpowder there was. He took Han Yunxi's hand and said, "Let's go." Han Yunxi knew how to deal with the situation. Long Fei-yi had an idea of what to do, but she couldn't guess what he was thinking. After the two of them returned to the Wu clan's grain store, Long Fei-yi whispered a few words to Uncle Wu. Uncle Wu's expression changed before he quickly left the store. "Your Highness, what are you doing?" Han Yunxi couldn't help asking. Long Fei-yi smiled but didn't say anything. He held her as they leapt onto the highest roof. Han Yunxi was confused. Just as she was about to speak, Long Fei-yi suddenly pulled her into his embrace from behind. This was her favorite action. His gentle embrace was like bringing her into his world. Her back, which was the weakest part of her defense, was completely exposed to him. "Your Highness, what's wrong?" Han Yunxi's voice became gentle. Long Fei-yi still didn't say anything. He hugged her and rested his chin on her shoulder. He didn't say anything, so she didn't ask. Even if she didn't know anything, she still couldn't help but enjoy this moment of warmth. At this moment, it was as if there was no distance between them. Those 100 steps seemed to have disappeared, as if they would never be separated again. Not far away, at the same height, Gu Qixia was nestled in a tree branch and sleeping with his arms behind his head. He was having a beautiful dream. He dreamt that he had returned to his childhood, when he was very, very young. Before he had been punished or abandoned, when he was still an ordinary child, his biological father, the dean of the medical academy, had hugged him and gently coaxed him to sleep. Be good. Be good. After a while, there was a sudden commotion on the streets. Very soon, Han Yunxi saw many people fleeing in panic from the direction of the restaurant. Gradually, more and more people gathered, as if they'd all turned out in full force to head for the grain store. Amidst the commotion, Han Yunxi heard someone shout, "Zhang Sun Zilan is hiding gunpowder. It's going to explode. The Eastern District is going to explode too. Run. Let's retreat. If we don't, we'll lose our lives." Han Yunxi seemed to have realized something. Just as she was about to turn around, Long Fei-yi gently covered her ears and said gently, "It should be very beautiful. Be good and watch carefully." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a deafening boom. Huge sparks suddenly exploded in the darkness ahead, like a red lotus blooming in the dark night. It exploded. The gunpowder in the wine cellar exploded. Soon, the sound of explosions rang out one after another, followed by the continuous explosion of sparks. Everyone was running for their lives in panic, trying to escape from this terrifying disaster. Only Han Yunxi was in the arms of the man who dominated everything. She covered her ears and enjoyed the magnificent fireworks. Long Fei-yi was right. Putting aside the horror of the fire, it was really, really beautiful to look at from the high roof. Han Yunxi was stunned by the sight. Beside her, Gu Qixia had been jolted awake by the explosion. He jumped up and almost fell down, but fortunately, he managed to grab hold of a tree trunk in time. He had already forgotten what kind of dream he had been dreaming about, and had forgotten the gentle and loving he had heard in his dream. He cursed, "Fuck, Long Fei-yi did this. He's playing so big." Yes, this explosion had been caused by Long Fei-yi. He had just estimated the amount of gunpowder in the underground wine cellar and estimated the area of effect if all the gunpowder and the wine in the wine cellar exploded together. After returning to Uncle Wu's grain store, he immediately ordered Uncle Wu to spread the news that the gunpowder was going to explode, and to evacuate everyone in the area of effect. There were not many people in the black market, so it was easy to evacuate everyone. After everyone had left, Uncle Wu went to start the fire. Everything had happened so suddenly that Zhangsun Zealand probably still did not understand what was going on. The explosions became more and more frequent, and the fire grew bigger and bigger. Before long, the beautiful fireworks could no longer be seen, and only a raging inferno was left. The restaurant and everything around it had been destroyed in an instant, turning into a sea of fire. It was the epicenter of the explosion, and the fire was so big that it quickly spread to the entire street. At this time, not only the Eastern District, but even the Western District was in danger. Not to mention whether they would be affected by the fire, just the thick smoke alone was enough to kill many people. Soon, the black market's mysterious elders guild appeared and opened several escape doors that had never been opened before. They also mobilized the black market's guards to maintain order and evacuate the crowd. Long Fei-yi and Han Yunxi stood on the high roof and saw everything clearly. Han Yunxi was so shocked that she couldn't help but laugh. "Your Highness, you actually, is it beautiful?" Long Fei-yi asked seriously. Han Yunxi nodded. "It is indeed beautiful." Could this be considered the first time Long Fei-yi had accompanied her to watch fireworks? It was so thrilling and grand. This fellow always gave her such extravagant surprises. How could she forget? Of course, despite her shock, Han Yunxi was still very calm. "Your Highness, you've destroyed the evidence. What can we use to negotiate with Zhangsun Zealand? This fellow has a large sum of money in this prince's private bank. What do you think we should use to negotiate with him?" Long Fei-yi asked. Han Yunxi was shocked when she heard this. "Your Highness, you've known Zhangsun Zealand for a long time." Han Yunxi then recalled that when Ouyang Ningnua had mentioned Zhangsun Zealand, Long Fei-yi had not asked much about it. He had only asked who the other owner of the black market was. "I found out about it not too long ago. This prince has known him for a long time, but I didn't know that he was half an owner of the black market," Long Fei-yi said calmly. Han Yunxi's idea was brilliant, but it wasn't as perfect as blowing up the black market. For one thing, the explosion of the black market would be felt by everyone within a 100-li radius. Soon enough, the capital would get wind of the news as well. Emperor Tianhui wouldn't be able to sit still and send people to investigate. Once they found traces of gunpowder, things would get serious. With Emperor Tianhui's distrustful personality, he'd hesitate if Long Fei-yi reported the news. Perhaps he'd even suspect that Long Fei-yi was trying to use the chance to destroy the Chu clan. But if the black market explosion caught Emperor Tianhui's attention, then things would be different. Emperor Tianhui was no fool. Judging from the amount of gunpowder and the power of the black market, he'd easily suspect the Chu clan. Secondly, once the black market exploded, all of Zhangsun Zealand's most profitable businesses would be destroyed. Long Fei-yi only needed to secretly spread the news that Zhangsun Zealand was half an owner of the black market. That way, the imperial court would keep an eye on Zhangsun Zealand. Although they'd have no evidence to arrest him, they'd at least put him on the list of suspects. Then all of Zhangsun Zealand's legitimate businesses in Tianning would be frozen. Then Long Fei-yi would have the perfect excuse to freeze all of Zhangsun Zealand's silver in the private bank. For a successful businessman like him, what could be more tragic than being penniless? What else did a businessman value more than money? Long Fei-yi wasn't planning to threaten him with gunpowder or his life, but money. Thirdly, once the black market exploded and the gunpowder was destroyed, neither the Chu clan nor Emperor Tianhui would be able to get their hands on it. The power of Tianning's black market would disappear as well. For Long Fei-yi, he'd have one less enemy when he took control of the capital in the future. Han Yunxi didn't know what to say after listening to Long Fei-yi's analysis. She didn't just admire this man, but worshipped him. The flames were starting to spread, but the explosions were still going on. There was no way to put them out. Long Fei-yi took Han Yunxi with him and left as well. Gu Qisha couldn't help but sigh as he watched them leave. Oh Yang Ning Nuo, what's the point of writing it down in black and white? Chapter 479. What's the point of it being written in black and white? Ouyang Ning Nuo tore the contract to shreds as soon as he escaped from the black market. This was the biggest failure of his business career and the most thorough loss he'd ever suffered in a business negotiation. The contract stated that he wouldn't take a single cent of the profits from the partnership between Pilfiend Pharmacy and Medicine City. However, Long Feiyi wouldn't interfere with any of Zhang Sun Zealand's businesses. When Long Feiyi had agreed to this condition, Ouyang Ning Nuo had been puzzled. However, he couldn't find any loopholes in the contract. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that Long Feiyi would detonate the gunpowder and blow up the entire black market. After all, he was the other boss of Sky Domain Black Market. When he first learned that Zhang Sun Zealand was working with Western Zhou's Chu clan to smuggle gunpowder, Ouyang Ning Nuo had been looking for an opportunity to topple Zhang Sun Zealand and swallow the other half of Sky Domain Black Market. When Gu Beiyue told him about Pilfiend Pharmacy, he knew his chance had come. Once Long Feiyi found out about the gunpowder in the black market, Zhang Sun Zealand would be finished. Ouyang Ning Nuo was waiting for Long Feiyi to make a move. He was waiting for Zhang Sun Zealand to be driven into a corner and sell off his businesses. Then, Ouyang Ning Nuo would be able to keep a low profile and slowly become the only boss of Sky Domain Black Market. But this perfect plan had been ruined by Long Feiyi. Not only did Ouyang Ning Nuo lose Zhang Sun Zealand's businesses, he'd also lost the other half of his business. Moreover, Long Feiyi hadn't broken the contract. The contract stated that he couldn't interfere with Zhang Sun Zealand's businesses, but it didn't say that he couldn't destroy them. In any case, would Long Fei admit that burning it down counted as a form of meddling in their affairs? Would Long Feiyi admit that he was the one who started the fire? Damn it! Ouyang Ning Nuo, who had always been good-tempered, was furious. He scattered the pieces of the contract on the ground and stomped on them several times, but he still couldn't calm down. Although legitimate businesses were profitable, how could they make money as fast as the black market? Who knew how long it would take to recoup the losses this time? Moreover, Sky Domain Black Market was connected to many officials in Tianning's imperial court. Now that the black market was gone, the chain of profits was gone as well. If he wanted to win over these people to facilitate his other businesses, he'd have to think of another way. Long Feiyi, you better not fall into my hands one day. Ouyang Ning Nuo spat out those words before turning around to leave. Meanwhile, the other boss of the black market, Zhang Sun Zealand, had just arrived. As soon as he got off the carriage, he saw that the black market's emergency exits had all been opened. Everyone had fled, and thick smoke billowed out of the black market. He stared blankly for a moment and was about to rush in when a servant hurriedly pulled him back. "Master, everything has been blown up and burned. We can't go in." Zhang Sun Zealand fiercely slapped him and said angrily, "What nonsense are you spouting? Scram!" Pushing the servant aside, he recklessly rushed towards the door. However, just as he reached the door, he was choked by the thick smoke that gushed out. He coughed for a while before he could catch his breath. None of the servants behind him dared to approach. Zhang Sun Zealand stared blankly at the exit, forced to accept the fact that the gunpowder had exploded. He felt like he'd suffered a huge blow, and it took him a long time to recover. When Chu Tianyin had first sought him out for a partnership, he'd drawn him a beautiful blueprint. The first thing he'd promised was to use the power of the imperial court to help him seize the other half of Sky Domain Black Market from Ouyang Ning Nuo's hands. But now, Zhang Sun Zealand recovered his wits and roared, "How did the wine cellar explode? Was the explosion an accident, or was it man-made? If it was an accident, he might be able to escape. If it was man-made, then he was doomed. Master, news of the gunpowder in the wine cellar suddenly spread. Half of the black market knew about it and fled. That's why the wine cellar exploded. Someone must be messing with us on purpose, the servant reported. Zhang Sun Zealand's expression turned even uglier. Just then, the sound of hurried hooves could be heard. It was the arrival of the government. The first few explosions in the black market had caused as much of a commotion as an earthquake. Everyone in the surrounding villages had sensed it. It had only been a little over 2 hours, but the nearest government office had already sent people over. Soon, the capital governor's men, the imperial guards, and many other forces would arrive. Despite his despair, Zhang Sun Zealand still managed to calm down. He immediately boarded the carriage. Return to the imperial capital, quickly. Someone had done this on purpose. The imperial court would definitely investigate him soon. He had to hurry back and prepare a backup plan. At the very least, he had to transfer all of his assets and businesses. Stockpiling gunpowder was a threat to the imperial capital. If the imperial court wanted to investigate him, they didn't need any evidence. They would first seal off all of his avenues of escape and trap him in the imperial capital before slowly discussing the evidence with him. With the departure of the 2 leaders of the black market, the Council of Elders that had been established by them naturally disbanded on its own. Everyone had left, leaving behind a burning mess. By the time Mu Qingwu arrived with a large group of imperial guards, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had finally left. Emperor Tianhui must have heard of the situation by now. But they'd hardly reached the city gates when they saw Long Tianmo leading a group of men out of the city. Han Yunxi laughed out loud. Your Highness, this crown prince is probably even more impatient than His Majesty, isn't he? Long Fei Yi replied mildly, his tone light and breezy. In the past, Chu Qingge had repeatedly invited Han Yunxi to the palace. It wasn't clear what the woman's motives were, but she couldn't escape the label of crafty plots and machinations. Meanwhile, the Empress Dowager had been keeping an eye on her the entire time, hoping to sow discord between her and Chu Qingge so she could reap the benefits. Now that the gunpowder case had been exposed, neither Chu Qingge nor the Empress Dowager would have time to make trouble for her for a long time. They were too busy dealing with each other. Thinking up to here, Han Yunxi couldn't help but sneak a peek at Long Fei Yi, only to see the mastermind behind the scenes reading a scroll with his head bowed. It was as if the impending storm had nothing to do with him at all. He never interfered with the affairs of the imperial court, but every time he made a move, he could stir up huge waves in court and even the harem. This was His Highness Duke of Qin's methods and one of his most revered traits. By the time Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi returned to the Duke of Qin's estate, Gu Qisha was already waiting for them at the gates. As soon as he saw them get off the carriage, Gu Qisha rose to his feet. Long Fei Yi, why didn't you tell this old man that you found gunpowder? Would Long Fei Yi answer him? Of course not. Besides the woman he was holding hands with, who else had he wasted his breath on? He didn't even look at Gu Qisha as he led Han Yunxi through the gates. Gu Qisha immediately followed after them, but the guards blocked their way as soon as they entered the estate. Han Yunxi, for better or for worse, we're business partners. Is this how you treat your guests? Gu Qisha asked loudly. Do you need something? Han Yunxi finally spoke up. This old man was planning to stay in the capital and personally follow up on the Medicine Ghost Valley's affairs, Gu Qisha replied. And then? Han Yunxi asked patiently. Gu Qisha chuckled. This old man thought it over and decided that it's more convenient to stay at the Duke of Qin's estate. Han Yunxi was about to speak when Long Fei Yi suddenly agreed. He ordered cold, Chu Shifeng, prepare a guest room. Leaving aside Han Yunxi, even Gu Qisha was taken aback. But since Long Fei Yi dared to let him in, he had the guts to stay. Just like that, Gu Baiyu settled down in a small courtyard in the Duke of Qin's estate. If Gu Baiyu's recuperation last time didn't count, he would be the first guest ever to stay overnight at the Duke of Qin's estate. When they returned to the hibiscus courtyard, Han Yunxi finally spoke up. "Your Highness, are we really keeping him here?" "So you don't have to run away all day," Long Fei Yi replied mildly. If Gu Qixia had stayed anywhere else, he would have gone to Han Yunxi every 2 or 3 days to discuss the Medicine Ghost Valley. She really would have had to run away all day. "Your Highness is too considerate," Han Yunxi didn't think much of it. As expected, Gu Qixia found Han Yunxi that very afternoon to discuss the design of Pill Fiend Pharmacy storehouse. Han Yunxi invited him to the flower gardens to discuss the matter. Naturally, Long Fei Yi accompanied them. Needless to say, Gu Qixia was quite attentive. He'd picked out a few details on the storehouse design plans since he was the most knowledgeable about medicine. Han Yunxi would listen to him unconditionally. A few days later, various versions of the gunpowder explosion spread throughout the capital city. Some of the rumors came from Long Fei Yi himself. Emperor Tianhui was furious and ordered a strict investigation into the source of the gunpowder. He also listed Zhangsun Zilan, Ouyang Ningnua, and a few other merchants with connections to the black market as suspects. All of their businesses in Tianning were sealed off for further investigation. Although Zhangsun Zilan and Ouyang Ningnua were both bosses of the black market, Zhangsun Zilan couldn't compare to Ouyang Ningnua, the head of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. Ouyang Ningnua's businesses in Tianning were sealed off, but he still had plenty of businesses in northernly, western Zhou, and even Medicine and Medical City. He wouldn't go bankrupt, and Emperor Tianhui wouldn't dare to be too rude and unreasonable with his status. But Zhangsun Zilan was in trouble. Most of his businesses were in Tianning, so Emperor Tianhui was sure to eat him up. Less than 5 days after the gunpowder explosion, he finally decided to give up everything in Tianning and went alone to Tianning's largest private bank, Abundant Treasure Private Bank. He told the manager directly, "I'll have to trouble you to inform His Highness Duke of Qin that Zhangsun Zilan requests an audience." Few people knew the identity of the owner of Abundant Treasure Private Bank, so the manager had no choice but to make the report. How many taxes had the Sky Domain black market stolen from the National Treasury? How many legitimate businesses had they suppressed in Tianning? How many people in dire need had they cheated? How could Long Fei Yi treat Zhangsun Zilan nicely? Currently, he was brewing tea with Han Yunxi in the back courtyard. Coldly, he ordered the manager, "Have him wait a moment." Wait a moment. Thus, Zhangsun Zilan waited anxiously for an entire day in the private bank. If he wasn't under someone else's control, he would have slammed the door and left. All of the silver drafts in his hands were of high value. The 10 or so of them were the real gold and silver he'd saved up over the years from both illegal and illegal businesses. It was also the only thing he could use to escape overseas and make a comeback. Because the face value was too high, in order to prevent theft, if he wanted to take out these banknotes to trade or receive cash from foreign banks, he had to stamp it with his own seal and that of the master of Baofeng Bank. Thus, he had to see His Highness Duke of Qin no matter what. He waited and waited until it was finally time for dinner. The manager brought Zhangsun Zilan to the tea room. Chapter 480. Zhangsun Zilan had already waited an entire day to see His Highness Duke of Qin. Although he had been filled with anxiety, nervousness, and fear, he still maintained his rationality and considered the pros and cons of the situation. He didn't know that the mastermind behind the gunpowder case was His Highness Duke of Qin, but he could more or less sense that His Highness Duke of Qin was deliberately making things difficult for him. Anyone who deliberately made things difficult for him must have ulterior motives. Thus, he had been pondering how to deal with it. After entering, he calmly bowed with clasped hands. This one is Zhangsun Zilan. Greetings to your Highness Duke of Qin and esteemed Wang Fei. Long Fei Yi looked down at him with disdain. You're half a master of sky domain black market. With such a powerful background, you dare to call yourself a commoner in front of this prince? This prince can't afford it. The trace of mockery on Long Fei Ye's lips made Zhangsun Zilan tremble with fear. Although he had mentally prepared himself, he still feared this cold prince. Your Highness Duke of Qin, you're shortening this one's lifespan. Zhangsun Zilan said anxiously. Long Fei smiled coldly. To what do I owe the honor of your presence today? Zhangsun Zilan pulled out a stack of banknotes from his sleeve. Your Highness, this one is here to ask for your stamp. This banknote has been in your bank for several years. It just so happens that there's a good project coming up, so this one wants to use it all. Zhangsun Zilan spoke as if the gunpowder case hadn't happened, and the rumors outside weren't true. Han Yunxi felt admiration. Unfortunately, His Majesty has sealed off all of your assets. What do you think this prince should do? Long Fei Yi asked. Zhangsun Zilan grew anxious. Your Highness Duke of Qin, this one can accept that others don't believe me, but you can't not believe me. This one wants to ask you to uphold justice for this one. As he spoke, he actually took out half a stack of banknotes and placed it on the table. Han Yunxi walked over and picked up the banknotes, counting them one by one. Seeing this, Zhangsun Zilan was overjoyed and hurriedly said, Esteemed Wang Fei, the bank belongs to His Highness. Everything here is decided by His Highness. Even His Majesty can't interfere, right? That's right. Han Yunxi smiled beautifully. Zhangsun Zilan became even happier and handed over a few more. Esteemed Wang Fei, please kindly accept them. Han Yunxi still took it and said with a smile, there's a total of 15 pieces. That's 60 million taels. Zhangsun Zilan nodded repeatedly. This was half of his savings, and was not a small sum. He had asked around before coming here. Apparently, if he could deal with Qin Wang Fei, he could basically deal with His Highness Duke of Qin. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi turned to look at Long Fei Yi. Your Highness, is a mere 60 million enough to bribe you? When these words came out, Zhangsun Zilan was so scared that his face turned ashen. Esteemed Wang Fei, this one didn't mean that. This one only wanted to, if it's not a bribe, then it must be a bribe. Your Highness, when did you become so easy to bribe? Han Yunxi asked in shock. Zhangsun Zilan's legs almost turned to jelly. Esteemed Princess Consort, you've misunderstood, you've misunderstood. This one doesn't have any other intentions, it's just that I came in a rush and didn't prepare a greeting gift for your Highness, so I ask your Highness to kindly accept it. Kindly accept it. Since you don't have any other intentions, this prince will accept it. Long Fei Yi really did accept it. Zhangsun Zilan let out a sigh of relief, then offered up the remaining banknotes in his hand. Your Highness, please bestow a seal. But Long Fei Yi didn't even look at it. This prince heard that you have private dealings with Medicine City. Surprise flitted through Zhangsun Zilan's eyes before he immediately denied it. Your Highness, medicinal ingredients are used to save lives. They can't be used privately. After escaping Tianning, he still wanted to continue doing business in the black market. Medicinal ingredients were the most profitable business, and the fastest way for him to make a comeback. No matter what, he couldn't betray those young masters of Medicine City. This prince didn't think it was possible when I heard about it either, Long Fei Yi said. Zhangsun Zilan didn't know why the Duke of Qin was inquiring about this matter, but he didn't have time to think about it. He offered up the banknotes again. Your Highness, please bestow a seal. This prince already said that His Majesty has orders to seize all of your assets. Do you want this prince to go against His Majesty's orders? Zhang Sun Zilan glanced at the banknotes that Han Yunxi had taken away, then at his own. Despite his anger, he didn't dare to say anything. He had deposited the banknotes in the Duke of Qin's private bank precisely because he wanted to use the chance to form a relationship with the man. Now he truly regretted his actions. Despite his regrets, he remained calm. After some hesitation, he said in a low voice, "Your Highness Duke of Qin, this one knows that there are many rumors and slanders going around outside. His Majesty has also listed this one as a suspect, but this one really wasn't responsible for the gunpowder case. This one really doesn't have the guts to do such a thing." On the other hand, the other boss of the black market, Zhang Sun Zilan, wanted to speak, but stopped himself. He thought that Long Fei Yi would be curious, but Long Fei Yi didn't say a word. Zhang Sun Zilan could only continue. "Your Highness, the other boss of Sky Domain Black Market is the famous head of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, Ouyang Ningnua." Long Fei Yi was laughing coldly in his heart. His guess was right. Ouyang Ningnua was indeed the other boss of Sky Domain Black Market. Still, he didn't say a word. Zhang Sun Zilan really couldn't figure out the Duke in front of him. He glanced at Qin Wangfei and saw that she was calm and collected, but didn't say a word either. Without a choice, he could only brace himself and continue. "Your Highness, this gunpowder must have been sent in from outside the country. Ouyang Ningnua has the strongest connections at the border." Ouyang Ningnua had exposed Zhang Sun Zilan in hopes of using Long Fei Yi to deal with him and swallow up half of the black market. Now Zhang Sun Zilan was framing Ouyang Ningnua and dragging him down with him. As Han Yunxi listened, she couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Is there anyone more cunning than a businessman in this world? The Duke of Qin. Thinking up to here, she couldn't help but chuckle. "Your Highness, Ouyang Ningnua owns half of Sky Domain Black Market and has many businesses in three-way black market as well. With Ouyang Ningnua's skills, a shipment of gunpowder is nothing to him. Your Highness, the Emperor may be muddle-headed, but you're not, are you? This is the best chance to restrain Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. If your Highness is willing to investigate Ouyang Ningnua, this one will do everything in my power to help." Long Fei Yi allowed Zhang Sun Zilan to speak as he watched, but didn't say a word. Zhang Sun Zilan had been full of confidence, but faced with Long Fei's silence and icy gaze, he gradually lost his confidence and began to feel guilty. Some people couldn't convince others with a pile of nonsense, while others could command respect with a single glance. Long Fei Yi was the latter. Once Zhang Sun Zilan shut up, Long Fei Yi spoke up cold. "Zhang Sun Zilan, don't worry. As long as the gunpowder isn't yours, His Majesty will definitely prove your innocence. As for Ouyang Ningnua, even if His Majesty doesn't touch him, the true owner of the gunpowder won't spare him." Long Fei Yi hadn't spoken clearly, but Zhang Sun Zilan was already enlightened. Without proof, Emperor Tianhui would at most seal off his businesses and confine him to Tianning's capital city. But Chu Tianyin would kill him to keep his mouth shut. Zhang Sun Zilan was so shrewd that he forgot the most important thing in his rush to escape. Finally, Zhang Sun Zilan realized that his life was in danger and panicked. "Your Highness!" he cried in alarm. "Someone come, see the guest out," Long Fei Yi said. Zhang Sun Zilan didn't hesitate. "Your Highness, as long as your Highness can protect this one's life and escort me safely to Northernly, this one is willing to provide detailed evidence of Medicine City's 3 clans supplying gunpowder to the black market over the years. But this Wang Fei is still very curious about the origins of the gunpowder." "How much do you know?" Han Yunxi asked with interest. "Since Qin Wangfei is curious, why don't you tell me everything you know besides Ouyang Ningnua?" Long Fei Yi said. Zhang Sun Zilan finally realized that Qin Wangfei was the most difficult person to deal with, not the Duke of Qin. She was definitely a woman who wanted a yard after getting an inch. At this point, other than denying that he was the one who had obtained the gunpowder, he could also expose Chu Tianyin. To reply esteemed Wang Fei, this one understands that the gunpowder came from Western Zhou's Chu clan. The Chu clan's young master, Chu Tianyin, smuggled it in through wine jugs. There was supposed to be another batch next year, but it looks like there won't be any more, Zhangsun Zilan replied. Chu Tianyin. How many people does the Chu clan have hidden in the capital? Han Yunxi asked. This one understands that there are quite a few, but this one doesn't know the specifics, Zhangsun Zilan replied honestly. Han Yunxi couldn't help but recall Su Xiaoyu's rainbow signal flares. It looked like the Chu clan had long set up an ambush in Tianning's capital. Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei, this one even saw Chu Tianyin once last month. This one estimates that he should be in Tianning right now. Perhaps he's even hiding in the capital. Zhangsun Zilan didn't dare to speak. After all, Chu Tianyin was probably looking for him everywhere to silence him. Originally, Long Fei and Han Yunxi only wanted to get evidence of Medicine City's collusion with the black market, but they ended up getting news of the Chu clan instead. Both of them were surprised and wary. Hand over the evidence and your lordship will arrange for you to leave tonight, Long Fei finally opened his golden mouth. Delighted, Zhangsun Zilan hurried back to retrieve the evidence. Naturally, he wouldn't leave such an important item in the black market. The evidence was a thick ledger that recorded in detail who the three great clans of Medicine City were, when, what they sent to the black market, how much Zhangsun Zilan had sold for, and how much he'd split with those people. Every stroke of the ledger was extremely detailed and stamped with a seal. Han Yunxi flipped through a few pages and was truly happy. With this evidence, would Medicine City still refuse to compromise? Once the evidence was in their hands, Long Fei finally stamped Zhangsun Zilan's banknotes and arranged for guards to escort him out. As for the silver that Zhangsun Zilan had offered, Long Fei said to treat it as a black market donation to the Han clan's clinic. Your Highness, how about we go to Medicine City tomorrow? Han Yunxi was especially excited. What are we going to do? Long Fei asked. Negotiate, of course. Have them supply us with goods. They must always supply us with low-grade high-quality ingredients. Han Yunxi said seriously. Long Fei stroked her bangs and smiled. If they want to negotiate, it should be them coming to the capital. What are you going to do? Why did this stupid girl like to run away all the time? With a bargaining chip in hand, as long as he sent a message to the three great clans of Medicine City, they would be in a hurry to come. Just like that, Long Fei took Han Yunxi back to his residence. Of course, before returning, he sent someone to let Long Tianma know that Chu Tianyin might be in the capital. Let Long Tianma and Chu Tianyin slowly fight it out, and let the people of Medicine City come from afar. He had to find some time to deal with the person living in his residence. After dragging things out for so long, it was time to take off the mask. One by one, they weekly posted their username on Weibo, IMGMO. Chapter 481. Early in the morning, Han Yunxi had just woken up when Zhao Mama came to report, esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness has invited Pill Fiend to drink tea in the garden. He wants you to come along. Han Yunxi almost thought that she was still dreaming. Long Fei was inviting Gu Qisha to drink tea. Did the sun rise from the west today? Really? Han Yunxi asked doubtfully. Before Zhao Mama could answer, Su Xiaoyu spoke first. Acting like a big sister, she placed her hands on her hips and said confidently, Mistress, His Highness must be plotting something. He's up to no good. After returning to Leisurely Cloud Pavilion after losing her memories, Su Xiaoyu was much more diligent than before. Every day, she would snatch away Bailey Mingxiang and Zhao Mama's chores, disliking them for being slow. Now, she was fighting with Bailey Mingxiang over watering the poisonous plants in the courtyard. Impudent. Is His Highness someone you can criticize? Zhao Mama immediately reprimanded. Han Yunxi had long since gotten used to Su Xiaoyu's mouth. She smiled and said, "Let's go. Come with me to see what His Highness is up to." When they arrived at the garden, Long Fei Yi was already sitting down to brew tea. Today, he wasn't dressed in his usual black robes, his black hair tied up in a bun, looking cold and mysterious. His hair was tied up with a white jade hairpin. His white robes were embroidered with cloud sleeves, making him look noble and elegant. He was sitting cross-legged on the bamboo couch in the pavilion. He was so handsome that he looked like a celestial in a painting. His every movement was elegant. Han Yunxi had forgotten how long it had been since she last saw His Highness in white. She liked this kind of His Highness Duke of Qin. This kind of him had the smell of sunshine, was more approachable, and lacked that cold and cruel aura. She purposely stopped in her tracks and quietly watched him. It was as if time would stop at this moment if she didn't move. "Mistress, you like His Highness Duke of Qin very much, right?" Su Xiaoyu asked. Han Yunxi tilted her head and looked at her. "Nonsense. How much do you like it?" Su Xiaoyu asked again. Han Yunxi pretended not to hear and did not answer. Su Xiaoyu asked again, "Do you like him so much that you'll die without him?" Han Yunxi finally couldn't ignore her. She looked at her with disdain. "You're so young, but you're always asking about death. You're not cute at all. Cuteness can't be eaten." Su Xiaoyu snorted. As the master and servant chatted, Gu Qisha suddenly appeared from the side. "Good morning, little girl." Han Yunxi and Su Xiaoyu were both startled. At this moment, Long Fei Yi had already stood up in the pavilion and looked over from afar. "Morning," Han Yunxi replied indifferently. Su Xiaoyu sized up Gu Qisha, who was dressed in black, and said coldly, "What the hell is this early in the morning?" Unexpectedly, as soon as she said this, her throat suddenly tightened. At the same time, Han Yunxi's detoxification system warned her that there was poison in her surroundings. Su Xiaoyu clutched her neck, unable to make a sound. She was so frightened that she grabbed Han Yunxi's hand and begged for help. The detoxification system had already determined that Su Xiaoyu had been poisoned by a mute poison. The most frightening thing about this poison was that if it wasn't neutralized within the time it took for a joss stick to burn, it would never be neutralized. Han Yunxi immediately took out the detoxification system's antidote from her medical pouch and gave it to Su Xiaoyu. However, just as Su Xiaoyu's throat felt a little better, her legs suddenly turned to jelly and she fell to her knees without any warning. Poison again. This was a poison that could harm a person's shins and bones. It needed to be neutralized immediately, otherwise, the person would be permanently crippled. The detoxification system quickly gave her another antidote. This antidote could not be taken directly. It had to be sprayed on the knees for it to be effective. "Sit down and roll up your trousers," Han Yunxi immediately ordered. When Su Xiaoyu saw Han Yunxi's serious expression, she didn't dare to delay and hurriedly did as she was told. However, just as Han Yunxi was about to spray the antidote, Su Xiaoyu suddenly burst into tears and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Finally, Han Yunxi grew angry and stood up. "Gu Qisha, don't you know that children's words carry no harm? How could you use such a vicious poison?" The poison that Su Xiaoyu had been poisoned was naturally Gu Qisha's doing. Gu Qisha chuckled and said, "Children's words carry no harm. Do you think she's a 3-year-old child?" Han Yunxi couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him and focused on neutralizing Su Xiaoyu's poison. Who would have thought that Gu Qisha would continue to poison her? When Han Yunxi smelled the scent of poison, she immediately said coldly, "That's enough." Gu Qixia glanced at the white figure in the pavilion and grinned. "An apology is enough. Don't even think about it." Su Xiaoyu fumed. Wouldn't it be a loss for her to apologize after being poisoned so many times? Blood began to flow from the corner of her mouth again at those words. Han Yunxi handed the antidote to Su Xiaoyu and shielded her behind her back. Cold, she looked at Gu Qixia from head to toe. "Your Excellency Pill Fiend not only has superb medical skills, but poison skills as well." How unexpected. Han Yunxi had seen everything clearly just then. This fellow hadn't even gotten close to Su Xiaoyu before he'd poisoned her. Moreover, he'd done it with such precision that it was no small feat at the very least. As far as she knew, there weren't many people in Cloud Realm continent with such skills. Zhu Nixia was one of them, while Gu should have similar skills as well. Medicine and poison come from the same family, Gu Qixia admitted openly, but stopped using poisons. In a moment of excitement, he revealed his poison skills. He really shouldn't have done that. He was about to change the topic when Han Yunxi wouldn't let it go. "Your Excellency Pill Fiend couldn't have been banished from Medical City for secretly studying poisons, right?" Han Yunxi couldn't figure out why Pill Fiend was so talented when she first heard about him. How could Medical City bear to throw him away? Just what kind of crime did he commit to be banished by the Medical Academy? Could he have committed a crime against the Medical Academy that involved the poison sect? Although medicine and poison came from the same family, his poison skills weren't ordinary at all. Gu Qixia smiled, but a sinister glint flashed past his eyes. No comment. His original plan was to use Su Xiaoyu's insults to cause a ruckus with Han Yunxi, but now that they'd changed the subject, Gu Qixia stopped himself. As he spoke, he turned to leave. Han Yunxi hurriedly chased after him and beat around the bush. "Gu Qixia, do you know how to cultivate poisons?" Gu Qixia didn't answer, so Han Yunxi smiled and said, "It's not like being able to use poisons is something to be ashamed of. Why don't you share it with us so we can compare notes?" Gu Qixia still didn't speak, but Han Yunxi didn't give up. Gu Qixia walked quickly, then slowly. Sometimes he'd look back, sometimes he'd laugh out loud, but he still refused to answer. From Long Fei Ye's perspective, this scene looked like a couple flirting with each other. He narrowed his eyes dangerously, his gaze frighteningly deep as the temperature around them dropped. He picked up the cup of red South Peak he'd prepared and threw it without warning. Heaven knows how much strength he'd used, but the teacup flew like an arrow towards Gu Qixia's face. He'd originally planned to sit down and have a drink of red South Peak and have a nice chat, but now he was going to rip off Gu Qixia's mask. Gu Qixia sensed the approaching threat before Han Yunxi did, so he abruptly turned around and gestured for Han Yunxi to follow him. However, in the next instant, he turned sideways and allowed the teacup to fly towards Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi suddenly saw a teacup hurtling towards her. For a moment, she couldn't recover her wits and froze in place. Long Fei panicked. He was about to throw a hidden dart at the teacup when Gu Qixia beat him to it. He raised his leg coolly and viciously kicked the teacup out of the air. He chuckled and turned around to look at Long Fei Yi. "Who is it? Why are you in such a bad mood so early in the morning?" Han Yunxi's mind was preoccupied with Gu Qixia's extraordinary poison skills, so she wasn't in the mood to flirt with him. How could she possibly have realized that there was something wrong with their chase just now? She looked suspiciously at Long Fei Yi. This guy's temper really isn't small. Why did he suddenly invite Gu Qixia over for tea? Long Fei didn't speak, but tossed out another teacup and aimed it at Gu Qixia's face. Naturally, Gu Qixia dodged out of the way before doing a somersault to land on a nearby tree. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, are you certain you invited this old man here for tea? We're here for tea. Why wouldn't you dare to drink? Long Fei Yi retorted. As he spoke, he threw another teacup at Gu Qisha. Gu Qisha immediately caught it. Gu Qisha's skill in throwing out teacups was impressive, but his catching skills weren't bad either. Not a single drop of South Peak Red spilled out of the teacup. After all, not everyone was like Long Fei Yi, who could tell the difference between the same type of tea with a single sniff. Gu Qisha only knew that this was black tea. After determining that it wasn't poisonous, he slowly tasted it. As he sipped on it, Long Fei Yi walked over with the teacup in his hand. How's the taste? Gu Qisha vaguely sensed that something was wrong, but he didn't back down. He jumped down from the tree and said, "Give me another cup." Long Fei Yi poured the tea as he spoke. Celestial Fragrance Tea Shop specialty tea is South Peak Red. I drank it back in Medicine Ghost Valley too. What, you're not familiar with this tea? Gu Qisha's eyes turned cold as he tensed up. On the side, Han Yunxi didn't notice the tense atmosphere between Long Fei Yi and Gu Qisha. She finally realized that Gu Qisha had given them the original South Peak Red. No wonder she found it so familiar. Celestial Fragrance Tea Shop had already been sealed up by Long Fei Yi, so the South Peak Red there belonged to Long Fei Yi. He wouldn't sell it. Could it be that Gu had planted it somewhere else and was selling it again? Or, Han Yunxi was still puzzling over the situation when Chu Shifeng suddenly ran over, his face full of anxiety. Your Highness, there's a guest requesting an audience. Long Fei Yi didn't even ask who the guest was, but simply said, I won't see him. But Chu Shifeng was put in a difficult position. After some hesitation, he hurried forward to whisper something in Long Fei Yi's ear. It wasn't clear what he said, but Long Fei Yi's expression shifted slightly. He told Han Yunxi, wait for me in the pavilion, I'll be right back. Then he left in a hurry, as if something urgent had happened. As soon as Long Fei Yi was gone, Han Yunxi called over a servant girl. Serve His Excellency Pill Fiend well. Anyone who could come to the Duke of Qin's estate to request an audience couldn't be an ordinary person. Moreover, someone who could make Chu Shifeng so nervous was even more unusual. At the very least, the visitor had to have the ability to gain face from the Duke of Qin. Just who had come? Did they have something urgent to discuss? Han Yunxi was filled with curiosity as she stealthily chased after him. Gu Qisha stared doubtfully at the teacup in his hands as a complicated look flickered past his eyes. Then he followed after Han Yunxi on the sly. But when Han Yunxi entered the guest hall through a side door, she saw a woman standing very close to Long Fei Yi. This was none other than Western Zhou's princess, Duan Muyao, whom she hadn't seen in ages. Chapter 482. Duan Muyao was here. Although she had been crippled by the Western Zhou royal family and had been hiding in the Celestial Mountain Sword sect, she seemed to have lived a good life for the past 1.5 years. She was originally as beautiful as a fairy, but she was a little skinny. Now that she had put on some weight, coupled with her half-exposed strapless dress, she seemed to have become more voluptuous. Han Yunxi immediately noticed her sword. It had an icy blue scabbard and was of the same style as Long Fei Yi's treasured sword. Duan Muyao didn't carry a sword when she was still Western Zhou's princess. Now that she carried a sword, it meant that she had left the imperial family and was now a true member of the Jianghu. Han Yunxi knew that she and Long Fei Yi were both closed-door disciples of the Tianshan Kenzo sect master. They were both top-notch swordsmen. From Han Yunxi's angle, she could only see Long Fei Yi's back. She could see Duan Muyao's smiling face and adoring eyes. They were speaking so softly that she couldn't hear them clearly. Han Yunxi watched in silence. She still felt uncomfortable. She had thought that Long Fei Yi was in a hurry and couldn't let her join in. That was why he had her wait in the garden. She had snuck over and didn't go in directly because she didn't want to disturb him. But she hadn't expected Duan Muyao to be here. Long Fei Yi had already explained the situation to her. Long Fei Yi had promised his master that he would protect Duan Muyao until she turned 18. A master for a day is a father for life. Han Yunxi understood that he couldn't go against his master's orders. But why didn't Long Fei Yi tell her that Duan Muyao was here today? Why did he have her wait in the garden? If he had something urgent, he could have just told her. Was there a need to hide it from her? Han Yunxi was still feeling gloomy when Long Fei Yi suddenly leaned over. Duan Muyao quickly moved closer and whispered into his ear. Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi was infuriated. She immediately walked in and grabbed Long Fei Yi's arm as if she was declaring ownership. Your Highness, Princess Yao is here. Why aren't you serving her tea? Duan Muyao glanced at Han Yunxi, a cold smile flashing in her eyes. She said gently, I'm not done yet, senior brother. A complicated look flashed across Long Fei Yi's eyes. He gently patted Han Yunxi's hand and said, Go prepare some refreshments. Preparing refreshments was purely a matter of issuing an order. The Duke of Qin's estate had no shortage of servants, so Long Fei's words were undoubtedly meant to send Han Yunxi away. What kind of secret was Duan Muyao hiding from her? Why did she have to whisper in her ear? Han Yunxi didn't want to leave, but her heart softened when she saw Long Fei Yi gently stroking the back of her hand. She pulled Long Fei Yi over and intimately whispered into his ear. It seemed like she was whispering, but she didn't actually say anything. She just breathed into his ear. Emin, go ahead. Long Fei Yi seemed to understand. Such an intimate action was an eyesore to Duan Muyao, but she still managed to keep her cool. It wasn't easy to get a chance to leave the mountain, so she definitely couldn't screw it up. Although Duan Muyao kept staring at her, Han Yunxi didn't pay her any more attention. Confident and at ease, she lifted her chin high and gracefully left without looking back. She didn't want to lose her confidence in front of this woman. However, after she left, her eyes couldn't help but darken. Long Fei Yi, how many more steps are there between us? The past few days have been too warm. I almost thought that we finished those 100 steps. There are many things about you, about Tianshan Kenzo, about the Tang sect, I haven't asked. Are you not going to take the initiative to tell me? If one day I stubbornly ask, will you be willing to tell me? Han Yunxi really didn't turn back to look at the situation in the room. She personally went to prepare tea and snacks. When she returned, Long Fei Yi was already sitting in the main seat. Duan Muyao was in the guest seat. When she saw Han Yunxi come in, Duan Muyao didn't say anything, as if afraid that Han Yunxi would overhear her. This was undoubtedly a silent protest. Han Yunxi didn't mind their silence. She laid out the tea and snacks, then gracefully sat in the main seat across from Long Fei Yi. She personally took a piece of cake and handed it to him. Your Highness. Long Fei Yi didn't like to eat cakes, especially desserts that this woman liked. When they were drinking tea together, she had offered him dessert several times, but after being rejected, she stopped. But now, Long Fei Yi looked at the transparent cake in front of him. He was a little helpless, but he still took it and took a bite. However, this mouthful immediately refreshed him. So sour. Comparable to vinegar. Your Highness, you don't like it? Then try another one. Han Yunxi hurriedly brought over another cake and handed it to Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi looked at her innocently. He still didn't refuse and took another bite. He almost vomited. It was extremely sour. It was so sour that his teeth hurt. You don't like it either? Han Yunxi asked seriously. Long Fei-yi was helpless, but he also wanted to laugh. How could there be such a woman? He loved and hated her. She brought over 2 cakes, and they were both sour. No doubt, she was warning him that she had knocked over a jar of vinegar. Long Fei didn't reply, but silently ate the 2 pastries. Han Yunxi wasn't appeased at all. Instead, she felt sorry for him and hurriedly poured tea for him. Duanmu Yao couldn't sit still anymore. She stood up and asked seriously, "Senior brother, can we go now?" Go? Where were they going? Han Yunxi finally cast a questioning look at Long Fei-yi. However, Long Fei-yi didn't explain anything. He said in a low voice, "Be good and stay in the residence. Don't run around. I'll be back in a few days." There were many things that she didn't ask. She had been waiting for him to tell her. However, this time, Han Yunxi asked without hesitation, "Where are you going with her? Did something happen?" Long Fei-yi evaded the question. "I'll be back in a few days." "Must we go?" Oh. Han Yunxi was silent for a moment. Then she whispered, "Your Highness, can you take me with you?" At this time, Duanmu Yao urged again. Her voice was soft and coquettish. "Senior brother, let's go quickly." Han Yunxi looked at Long Fei-yi. Her lovely eyes didn't contain pleading, but hope. Pleading and hope were 2 completely different things. She liked him, but she never forced him. She only hoped and hoped for him. "Your Highness, I want to go." She was very honest. However, Long Fei-yi ultimately disappointed her. He stroked her bangs as usual and said indifferently, "Be good and stay here. Don't run around. Stay away from Guqi Sha." After saying that, he got up and left with Duanmu Yao. Han Yunxi sat in silence and watched until Long Fei-yi and Duanmu Yao's figures disappeared into the distance. Only then did she reach out to stroke her bangs. She foolishly stroked them. Suddenly, her heart felt suffocated. It was so suffocating that it felt unbearable. It turned out that it was just her own wishful thinking. There were still many more steps to take. No matter how important or confidential the matter was, as long as Long Fei-yi didn't want to, who could stop him from keeping it a secret? Who could stop him from bringing her along? It turned out that she hadn't entered his world. She was still at the door. Outside the window, Guqi Sha narrowed his eyes when he saw Han Yunxi's disappointed expression. He walked over carelessly. "Little girl, did you get dumped?" Han Yunxi glared at him. "You were eavesdropping." "I was eavesdropping. I didn't hear anything either." "I don't know what that Duanmu Yao was whispering to Long Fei-yi," Guqi Sha said unhappily. "Whispering?" Han Yunxi was shocked. Guqi Sha's gaze was somewhat evasive, but he still said loudly, "They were really close." If this Princess Duanmu had married into the Duke of Qin's estate as a concubine, it would have been better than being crippled. Han Yunxi's attention was completely focused on the first half of Guqi Sha's sentence. Her face darkened as she got up and left. Guqi Sha quickly chased after her and followed Han Yunxi all the way to the back gates of the Duke of Qin's estate. Han Yunxi was about to leave when Chu Shifeng appeared. "Esteemed Wangfei, His Highness isn't here. It's best if you don't go out." Han Yunxi gave him a cold glare that made Chu Shifeng subconsciously back away. Her gaze was even more frightening than His Highness's, enough to kill. Of course, Chu Shifeng did back away, but none of the page boys dared to open the door. All of them were blocking the way. "Out of the way," Han Yunxi said coldly. The page boys all looked towards Chu Shifeng, who only pursed his lips in silence. "Don't make me say it again. Out of the way," Han Yunxi said sternly. The page boys were scared out of their wits, but they still didn't move. Han Yunxi activated her assassination weapons and shot out multiple needles at the page boys' knees. One by one, they collapsed to the ground, their legs numb and unable to move. Chu Shifeng panicked and rushed forward to block the needles. "Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness has orders." Before he could finish, Han Yunxi said coldly, "To put me under house arrest?" "No." Chu Shifeng was scared to death. His Highness had only said to be on guard against Gu Qixia, but nothing else. If esteemed Wang Fei left the estate, how were they supposed to guard against him? "If you're not, then out of the way." "Don't." Han Yunxi hadn't finished when Chu Shifeng stepped aside. He didn't want to be poisoned. How was he supposed to follow her out if he was poisoned? Gu Qixia grinned from one side. When he saw Han Yunxi leave, he didn't go through the back door, but climbed over the wall to follow behind her. "Lass, let's go take a look at Pill Fiend Pharmacy. They're starting work on the warehouse today." "Stay away from me." Han Yunxi mounted her horse and rode off. Naturally, Gu Qixia chased after her relentlessly, while Chu Shifeng and a large group of guards followed suit. It wasn't until the front and back gates of the Duke of Qin's estate had quieted down and Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had left the estate that Chu Tianyin ordered his scouts to withdraw. After the black market explosion, Long Tianma had been causing trouble for the Chu clan in front of Emperor Tianhui. Chu Tianyin should have focused on dealing with the man himself, but Ouyang Ningnua's secret missive had allowed him to see through Long Fei Yi's plans. As long as Duan Muyao could keep Long Fei Yi busy, he'd make Long Fei Yi regret detonating the gunpowder. Both Gu Qixia and Chu Shifeng assumed that Han Yunxi would leave the city to chase after His Highness Duke of Qin. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi rode her horse in a circle around the city before heading for the Gu estate. Currently, Gu Beiyue was reading medical books in the garden. Lil Thing was curled up on one side sleeping, but as soon as it smelled its master's scent, it jumped to its feet and stared at Gu Beiyue with wide eyes. "What's wrong?" Gu Beiyue's voice was as warm as the winter sun. Lil Thing really liked this voice. If it could die while listening to it, it'd feel happy. It squeaked a few more times before running out the door. Gu Beiyue immediately chased after it, only to see the steward walking towards them. "Master, esteemed Wang Fei has graced us with her presence. There's also a black-robed man who looks like His Excellency Pill Fiend." Gu Beiyue was a little surprised, but more than that, he was pleasantly surprised. His smile brightened as he said, "Quick, receive her." Chapter 483. The main gates of the Gu estate were tightly shut all year round, never opening for anyone. Gu Beiyue held a high position, but he stood alone. He didn't involve himself in politics, nor did he make friends with anyone in the imperial court. He didn't even make friends with anyone. There were many nobles in the imperial court and palace who tried to curry favor with Gu Beiyue, and some even tried to blackmail him. However, the Gu estate's main gates had never been open for anyone. Imperial Physician Gu had always said that he would come to the Imperial Physician courtyard if there was a problem. But today, he had personally opened the main gates to welcome Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi didn't know that this was a special case. She only thought that Gu Beiyue was being polite. Gu Beiyue was indeed very respectful. As soon as the gates opened, he bowed respectfully. "Esteemed Wang Fei, you've graced us with your presence. Please forgive this humble official for not going out to meet you." No need for formalities. Han Yunxi was already used to Gu Beiyue acting this way. She glanced at him. "Aren't you leaving yet?" "Leaving? Where?" Gu Qixia feigned ignorance. "You're not welcome here, Imperial Physician Gu," Han Yunxi said bluntly. "Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness Duke of Qin dumped you. You should go look for him. Don't vent your anger on me, Gu Qixia sighed helplessly. This guy really has a foul mouth. It's no wonder Han Yunxi doesn't like him. Han Yunxi was still fuming, so when she heard this, her face darkened. What nonsense are you spouting? Gu Qixia became serious. Girl, this old man isn't joking with you. Long Fei Yi isn't a good person. And you're a good person. Han Yunxi retorted. Didn't you see him and that little junior sister of his? Before Gu Qixia could finish, Han Yunxi coldly cut him off. His Highness's sect has an urgent matter to attend to. If you keep spouting nonsense, I'll poison your mouth. TSK, TSK, TSK. Gu Qixia sneered. Esteemed Wang Fei is so magnanimous. You're the good-for-nothing one. Han Yunxi didn't forget to curse back. She was a stubborn girl. Even though she was extremely depressed, she still maintained a proud expression on her face and defended Long Fei Yi to the end. The couple's internal conflicts should be resolved internally. There was no need for outsiders to interfere. Gu Qixia seemed to be really angry now. You damned girl, that portion of antidote was actually... Before Gu Qixia could explain himself, Gu Beiyue cut him off. Esteemed Wang Fei, it's windy outside. Please come inside. It's windy in the middle of summer. Han Yunxi finally calmed down a little. She knew that it was inappropriate to make a ruckus at the entrance. Stop him. Leaving these words behind, she strode into the room. Gu Qixia naturally wanted to follow, but Gu Beiyue hurriedly blocked him with his body. Lord Pill Fiend, scram. Gu Qixia didn't hold back at all. Gu Beiyue maintained his warm smile and asked in a low voice, Lord Pill Fiend, what's wrong with esteemed Wang Fei? Gu Qixia was already planning to climb over the wall, but when he saw Gu Beiyue's attitude, he was surprised. What does it have to do with you? Gu Beiyue pretended not to hear and continued, this one has seen Pill Fiend Pharmacy's blueprints. This one mentioned it to esteemed Wang Fei before, but this one still needs to take charge of the warehouse. Has this one seen it yet? Were you the one who made those changes? Gu Qixia asked. That's right. Compared to Lord Pill Fiend, this one can be considered an insider. I apologize for my inappropriateness. Gu Beiyue patiently explained, but Han Yunxi had already walked far away. Gu Qixia didn't realize that Gu Beiyue was deliberately stalling for time. He sneered, you're quite capable. Why didn't you return to the medical academy? Based on your grandfather's relationship and your current position, you should at least be a 6th-ranked doctor, right? I won't hide it from Lord Pill Fiend. This one isn't very interested in medical school, Gu Beiyue said in a low voice. Gu Beiyue had never really taken Gu Beiyue seriously, but when he heard this, he reevaluated him. In his eyes, any doctor who wasn't interested in medical school was a good doctor. He laughed heartily. You've got guts. This old man likes you. Gu Beiyue smiled faintly and began chatting with Gu Qixia about medical school. As they talked, Gu Beiyue said, Lord Pill Fiend, the wind is too strong at the entrance. Please come inside. Gu Qixia walked in with a perfectly justifiable reason. At the same time, Han Yunxi had already been brought to the Gu clan's garden by Lil Thing. Han Yunxi had been here once before and had left in a hurry, so she didn't know that Gu Beiyue had hidden such a medicinal herb garden in his home. Every blade of grass and every tree in the garden was filled with medicinal herbs, and all of them were flowering herbs. It was midsummer, so the garden was filled with colorful little flowers, and the air was filled with the faint fragrance of medicinal herbs. The stone path, the lawn, the flowering shrubs, and the shade of the trees were all beautiful to Ning Jing. No matter how upset he was, he would be gently soothed here. Han Yunxi finally understood why Lil Thing would come here every day. She sat down on the swing under a large tree and gently swayed back and forth. After a long while, she finally exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, releasing all the pent-up frustrations in her heart. She felt much better. Actually, she didn't know why she had come to the Gu clan. She just wanted to leave the Duke of Qin's residence for some fresh air. In the entire capital, aside from Gu Beiyue's residence, she didn't know where else to go. Of course, Ningjing didn't take long before Gu Qisha's voice reached her ears. He, using medicinal herbs as flowers, Imperial Physician Gu Shure is elegant. It can't compare to Medicine Ghost Valley's blooming flowers, Gu Beiyue replied modestly. Your place is too plain. Tomorrow, this daddy will give you a few stalks of beautiful purple and brilliant red, evergreen all year round. Gu Qisha seemed to be in a good mood. Han Yunxi knew that Gu Beiyue wouldn't be able to stop Gu Qisha, but she didn't expect that the two of them would actually strike up a conversation. She swayed back and forth on the swing as she watched them walk closer. Esteemed Wang Fei, there are still some areas in Pill Fiend Pharmacy's blueprint that this lowly official feels need to be changed. Since His Excellency Pill Fiend is here, this lowly official will bring it up to him. Gu Beiyue explained why he had let Gu Qisha in. Han Yunxi was too lazy to chase him away, so she swayed on the swing without saying a word. Esteemed Wang Fei, this lowly official has prepared some refreshments. Please come to the pavilion, Gu Beiyue said. Han Yunxi had originally calmed down a bit, but when she heard the words refreshments, she suddenly felt suffocated again. She calmly replied, no tea, just water will do. If it were anyone else, they would definitely ask why, but Gu Beiyue didn't ask any questions. He silently ordered the servants to remove the refreshments and replace them with water. The three of them entered the pavilion and sat down. If it were anyone else, they would definitely ask, esteemed Wang Fei, why have you come? But Gu Beiyue didn't ask any questions. He simply asked, esteemed Wang Fei, did you bring the blueprint? When Gu Beiyue had talked about Long Fei Yi and little junior sister at the entrance, Han Yunxi had been afraid that Gu Beiyue would ask her why she had come. But now, Gu Beiyue had misunderstood that she had come for the blueprint, so she no longer felt awkward. Where's the blueprint? She unhappily glared at Gu Qisha. Gu Qisha had originally wanted to use this opportunity to sow discord between this girl and Long Fei Yi, then explain the 10% antidote for the broomcorn millet poison. But now that this girl didn't seem as angry as before, he didn't have the heart to try and sow discord between them. He took out the blueprint and unfolded it on the table. The blueprint was covered in dots and dots of handwriting. There was Han Yunxi's, Gu Beiyue's, and even Gu Qisha's. Esteemed Wang Fei, take a look at this. This lowly one thinks that it would be better to change the layout and make it double in size, Gu Beiyue said seriously. Although Han Yunxi wasn't as angry as before, she still felt a little gloomy. She glanced at him and asked, Gu Qisha, what do you think? Gu Qisha thought about it for a long time, then nodded seriously. Indeed. Then change it, Han Yunxi said gloomily. Gu Beiyue and Gu Qisha discussed a few more areas, but Han Yunxi didn't seem to have the energy to continue and seemed to be lost in thought. Gu Beiyue glanced at Han Yunxi from time to time, but he soon changed the topic. A few days ago, I heard a really funny joke in the palace. How about I share it with the two of you? Han Yunxi didn't answer, so Gu Qisha casually asked, what joke? Once upon a time, there was a bear. It's said that it was really, really cold. It was really, really cold. Gu Beiyue said seriously. And then? Gu Qisha asked. And then that's it, haha. Gu Beiyue laughed. Gu Qisha was confused. That's it. Yes, that's it. It's funny, isn't it? Haha. Gu Beiyue laughed heartily. Who would have thought that the humble, gentle, and well-mannered imperial physician Gu could tell a joke and laugh so heartily? Gu Qisha rolled his eyes and didn't want to waste any more time talking. Gu Beiyue, on the other hand, couldn't stop laughing. Han Yunxi, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. That's not cold at all. I know something even colder. Gu Qisha wasn't interested, but Gu Beiyue looked expectant. Is that so? This official is all ears. Han Yunxi perked up and said seriously, once upon a time, there was a polar bear that was sitting alone on the ice in a daze. It was so bored that it started plucking its fur for fun. 1, 2, 3, until there wasn't a single hair left. She paused at this point. And then? Gu Beiyue asked curiously. Take a guess. Han Yunxi deliberately kept him in suspense. Gu Beiyue shook his head. I can't guess. And then it cried out. It's so cold. Gu Beiyue was stunned when he heard this, while Han Yunxi burst into laughter. She laughed even harder when she saw Gu Beiyue's stunned expression. It's very cold, isn't it? Ha ha ha. Gu Beiyue maintained his dazed expression, but a gratified smile flitted across his eyes. Cold jokes were not meant to entertain others, but to entertain oneself. The person who told the joke would always laugh louder than the person who heard it. Gu Qisha really didn't find it funny, but when he saw Han Yunxi laughing heartily, he pretended to shiver. It's so cold. It's so cold. It's so cold. Ha! As he laughed, Gu Qisha's interest was piqued. I'll tell you one too. Once upon a time, there was a eunuch below. Can you guess what happened? Han Yunxi thought for a long time but couldn't think of anything. Gu Beiyue, guess. Gu Qisha asked. Gu Beiyue didn't say anything, so Han Yunxi asked suspiciously, don't tell me it's gone too. Gu Beiyue couldn't help laughing when he heard this, but Gu Qisha burst into laughter. Han Yunxi, you're a genius. Han Yunxi couldn't wrap her head around it. She pondered for a moment. Once upon a time, there was a eunuch below, that's gone. Gu Qisha laughed so hard that his stomach hurt when he saw her confused expression. Ha ha ha. Han Yunxi finally realized what was so funny. She grabbed the drawing and threw it at Gu Qisha. You're shameless. She looked at Gu Beiyue and saw that he was holding back his laughter. Gu Beiyue obviously already knew the answer. Alright, she couldn't help but laugh. She had to admit that this dirty joke was amazing. Her gloomy mood unknowingly relaxed, and she didn't even realize it herself. However, just as they were laughing, Gu Beiyue's expression suddenly changed. He then pulled Han Yunxi into his arms. Almost at the same time, several arrows flew into the pavilion from all directions. Assassins! Chapter 484. Assassins. Whether it was Han Yunxi or Gu Beiyue, neither Gu Qisha had expected an ambush from an assassin. At this moment, they did not have the luxury of time to think too much as the rain of arrows was extremely fierce. Gu Qisha did not care if Gu Beiyue lived or died. He held Han Yunxi tightly in his arms, one hand wrapped around her while the other pulled out his sword and continuously deflected the arrows that were flying towards them. Almost at the same time, the sound of fighting could be heard from nearby. It seemed that the hidden guards protecting Han Yunxi were fighting with the assassins. Gu Beiyue. Protect Gu Beiyue. In the midst of her panic, Han Yunxi still remembered Gu Beiyue, who had no strength to truss a chicken. No matter who these assassins were, if they were not here for her, then they were here for Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue was innocent. She was tightly pressed against Gu Qixu's chest and could not struggle at all. Even breathing was difficult and she could not see the situation around her. However, she could hear the whooshing sounds of arrows flying through the air as well as the sounds of Gu Qixu's sword clashing with the arrows. She knew that the situation was very urgent and there were at least 100 archers lying in ambush around them. Gu Beiyue did not know any martial arts at all. Forget 10,000 arrows, one arrow would be enough to kill him. Gu Qixu, save Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue, I beg you, save Gu Beiyue. Han Yunxi had never cried before, but at this moment, she was so anxious that she was on the verge of tears. Fortunately, Gu Beiyue was not injured because Lil Thing was protecting him. Lil Thing's speed was much faster than Gu Beiyue's and its tiny figure constantly flashed around Gu Beiyue like a white shadow. The moment the arrows got close to Gu Beiyue, they all fell to the ground as if they had been bitten in half. Han Yunxi had not guessed wrongly. There were indeed many archers in the area and they were not using ordinary bows and arrows, but the very rare crossbow arrows. There was a big difference between bows and crossbows. Bows and arrows were shot in a parabolic arc and required both hands to operate. Without strong arm strength and endurance, one would not be able to shoot arrows over long distances and would not be able to fight for long periods of time. However, a crossbow was different. A crossbow was very small and could be operated with one hand. It relied on mechanical power to shoot in a straight line and had a long range. Moreover, its explosive power was very strong and its lethality was also very high. Compared to a long bow, a crossbow was much harder to dodge. The combined destructive power of a single crossbow arrow was comparable to the combined destructive power of 10 bows and arrows. It was unknown how many archers had sneaked into Gu Beiyue's courtyard, but it was not an exaggeration to describe the situation in the pavilion as a rain of arrows. If they were not careful, neither Gu Qixu nor Lil Thing would be able to protect Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue. When he heard Han Yunxi's cry, Gu Beiyue's gentle gaze became indescribably gentle. To him, such a dangerous situation was nothing to be afraid of. Unfortunately, neither Han Yunxi nor Gu Qixu had noticed the change in his expression. Gu Qixu was completely focused on dealing with the crossbow arrows and was annoyed by Han Yunxi's disturbance. He shouted angrily, "Your poisonous beast is protecting him so he won't die. I'm about to die from your noise, so shut up. Poisonous beast. Lil Thing." Han Yunxi finally remembered that Lil Thing was here as well. Her heart finally settled back into her chest. With Lil Thing's skills, it should be able to protect Gu Beiyue. But Han Yunxi didn't shut up. She said, "Gu Qixu, take me away from here, quick." She and Gu Beiyue had to leave the Gu estate immediately. That way, Gu Beiyue would be safe. The enemy had to be prepared for such a sudden and fierce attack. They wouldn't let them off so easily. "Where are we going?" "This is the safest place. Hold on for a while, the soldiers will arrive soon." Motherfucker, even Long Fei Ye's guards couldn't beat them. Heaven knows how many people are lying in ambush. This old man can't hold on much longer. Gu Qixu was telling the truth. Chu Shifeng had probably followed Han Yunxi here again. If even he couldn't stop the enemy's attacks, then the enemy must have made thorough preparations. Moreover, there had to be plenty of archers and assassins lying in ambush. Under these circumstances, they had no choice but to place their hopes on the Imperial Guards. Something so big had happened in the capital city, so they'd definitely be alerted by now. As long as the Imperial Guards arrived, they'd have no problems keeping their lives. Hearing Gu Qixu's words, Han Yunxi understood the situation even more. She was anxious, but helpless to do anything. Poisons and assassination weapons were useless in a situation like this. If only she knew a bit of swordsmanship, that would be great. She couldn't help but think of Long Fei Yi. Where did that guy and Duan Miao go? What are they doing now? Why isn't he here right now? In the midst of the fight, an arrow pierced Gu Qixa's shoulder and narrowly missed hitting Han Yunxi, who was in his arms. Gu Qixa's shoulder had just been injured, but he pretended as if nothing had happened and continued to dodge the arrows. Han Yunxi was buried in his arms, so she didn't see or feel a thing. Gu Beiyue furrowed his brows as he watched. The small flying dagger hidden in his hand almost flew out, but in the end, he didn't make a move. Lil Thing stopped, but in that moment of distraction, a sharp arrow pierced Gu Beiyue's shoulder. As the arrow entered, blood spurted out. Gu Qixa's black robes couldn't be seen, but Gu Beiyue's white robes revealed everything clearly. The arrow's wound worsened along with his blood. The design of this arrow was too strange. Only the heavens knew where it came from. It was really difficult to deal with. Gu Qixa's attention wandered for a moment, and 2 arrows pierced his back, causing him to spit out blood. However, he remained unmoved and continued to block the arrows as if he hadn't been injured at all. On the other hand, Lil Thing squeaked when it saw that Gu Beiyue was injured. Frightened, it didn't dare to linger and flew over, turning into a white blur that circled around Gu Beiyue from left to right. Lil Thing grew angry as well and cackled. It wanted nothing more than to pounce on the surrounding archers and bite them to death. But that was the nature of an arrow attack. Once you were outnumbered and outgunned, you had no choice but to keep dodging and evading. Hearing Lil Thing's cries, Han Yunxi asked anxiously, "What's wrong? What's wrong with Imperial Physician Gu?" Gu Qixa's body trembled at her words and he suddenly asked, "Lass, why aren't you worried about me?" Han Yunxi suddenly realized that his tone sounded familiar. She was about to ask when Chu Shifeng's voice carried over. "Esteemed Wang Fei, are you alright?" Chu Shifeng was already heavily injured, but he'd still managed to break through the encirclement. He and his guards had long been ambushed and couldn't take it anymore, so he'd sent in the archers to sneak into the flower gardens. The enemy had not only brought archers, but assassins as well. Currently, the guards were still fighting with the assassins outside, so Chu Shifeng had sacrificed a dozen or so of his own men to force his way inside. He dodged the arrows as he made his way towards the pavilion, but soon enough, a black-robed, masked assassin appeared and raised his sword to block his way. Chu Shifeng had no choice but to retreat. Very soon, he and the assassin were fighting to the death. Han Yunxi's thoughts were interrupted by Chu Shifeng. By now, Gu Qixa had recovered his composure. He didn't know what had gotten into him, but he'd almost changed his voice. So close. Soon, the attack of the arrow rain was already very fierce, and it continued to intensify. The number of arrows gradually increased. If there were no reinforcements, they would either be shot to death by the arrow rain, or their stamina would be exhausted, and they would still die. They desperately needed reinforcements. Finally, Gu Qixa couldn't take it anymore and raged, "Are the Dog Emperor's Imperial Guards all good-for-nothings? Why aren't they here yet?" It would have been better if he hadn't spoken, because his words only intensified the rain of arrows. At the same time, Chu Shifeng was kicked off the ground by the assassin, who crashed heavily onto the ground. Fortunately, he could still get up. "Your Excellency Pill Fiend, hold on. I've already sent word, the Imperial Guards will be here soon." Chu Shifeng shouted. Gu Qixa could only grit his teeth and hold on. His martial arts skills weren't very good, so he turned around to face Gu Beiyue with his back. Gu Beiyue immediately sucked in a cold breath. At some point, 5 arrows had pierced his back, causing blood to flow non-stop. In his shock, Gu Beiyue also noticed Gu Qixa's blood. He knitted his brows and seemed to realize something as his expression grew more and more serious. Finally, Just as Gu Qixia was about to give up, the Imperial Guards arrived. It wasn't clear how the guards and assassins outside were doing, but the sounds of fighting had already stopped before Gu Qixia's group even saw the Imperial Guards. The assassin distanced himself from Chu Shifeng and shouted, "Withdraw." The rain of arrows immediately decreased by half while he himself retreated. Chu Shifeng didn't chase after him, but cut down a few more arrows before charging into the pavilion to help Gu Qixia. Gradually, the number of arrows grew smaller and smaller. Soon enough, the sounds of fighting rose up around the garden again. Most likely, the Imperial Guards were dealing with the archers who hadn't retreated in time. Gu Qixia wasn't holding on so closely, so Han Yunxi could finally breathe in some fresh air. She looked at Gu Beiyue and Lil Thing, then at the scattered arrows on the ground and sighed. This sudden turn of events was like a nightmare. By the time everything stopped, Lil Thing was sprawled on the table, panting for breath. It had almost died from exhaustion. Chu Shifeng was lying paralyzed on one side, his body heavily injured. Gu Qixia was still holding on tightly to Han Yunxi, who struggled to free herself. Besides Gu Beiyue, who was still focused on Gu Qixia's blood, the rest of the group was more scared than hurt. At this moment, the leader of the Imperial Guards and a group of archers emerged from the flowers to appear in front of Han Yunxi's group. The leader of the guards wasn't Mu Qingwu, but a young officer. He didn't approach them, but knelt far away from the pavilion. "This soldier came too late to save you, esteemed Wang Fei, please forgive me." Although he knelt, the archers behind him didn't. Han Yunxi was still feeling that something was off when Chu Shifeng suddenly cried out, "Esteemed Wang Fei, be careful. It's a trap." As soon as he spoke, the kneeling young man waved his hand. All of the archers knocked their bows and aimed at Han Yunxi. None of them expected the Imperial Guards they'd been waiting for to change sides. Gu Beiyue was about to throw himself at them when Gu Qixia pulled Han Yunxi into his arms again and turned around, exposing his back to the arrows. Swish swish swish. Heaven knows how many arrows sank into his back. This time, he didn't need Han Yunxi to urge him to run out of the pavilion with Han Yunxi in tow. Now that the Imperial Guards had changed sides, this was the most dangerous place. Chapter 485. Gu Beiyue used his back as a shield to escape the pavilion with Han Yunxi in tow. However, the archers surrounding the pavilion didn't chase after them. Instead, they drew their bows and surrounded Chu Shifeng and Gu Beiyue. "What's going on?" "Not good, it's a trap. Esteemed Wang Fei's in danger." Chu Shifeng reacted quickly. Instead of chasing after Gu Qixia, these people had trapped them instead. Without a doubt, they wanted to silence them and prevent news of the Imperial Guard's betrayal from spreading. At the same time, there had to be a trap waiting for Gu Qixia to jump into it. Their methods were ruthless. So vicious. Judging from the current situation, Chu Shifeng was certain that Duanmu Yao's appearance wasn't a coincidence either. She was probably trying to lure His Highness Duke of Qin away on purpose. It was very likely that Chu Tianyin was the mastermind, but Chu Shifeng couldn't figure out how the man could mobilize all the Imperial Guards in Tianning. The young commander stood up and said coldly, "Guard Chu, you never thought you'd have a day like this, did you? Do you think you can hide the truth by wiping out our mouths? Do you think His Highness Duke of Qin is a vegetarian?" Chu Shifeng rebuked. "My family's master isn't a vegetarian either." The young commander smiled as he backed away step by step. It was obvious that he was about to give the order to fire the arrows. Gu Beiyue's warm gaze turned icy as he prepared to attack. But right at this moment, there was a gust of wind as a sharp sword flew through the air and pierced through the young commander's stomach. "Impudent thing! Very soon, Mu Qingwu flew over from nearby to land by the young commander's side. He yanked out his sword and kicked the corpse aside as he asked anxiously, "Imperial Physician Gu, Guard Chu, where's esteemed Wang Fei?" Mu Qingwu had been collecting evidence with the crown prince at the ruins of the black market for the past few days. He'd just returned when he heard that something had happened to Imperial Physician Gu, so he personally led his troops over. Along the way, his attendants reported the situation to him, and he rushed over at the fastest speed in his life. However, when he arrived at the Gu mansion, he discovered that the Imperial guards had betrayed him and colluded with the black-clothed assassins to set up an ambush at the entrance of the Gu mansion. After all, he had tens of thousands of Imperial guards under his control. As soon as he arrived, the black-clothed assassins had retreated and the rebel army had fled in all directions. He had given the order to pursue and capture them, but he had not dared to stay for even a moment. He had directly rushed in, afraid that something would happen to the princess consort. But who would have thought that he would not see her after arriving? Gu Qisha rescued esteemed Wang Fei. They're heading west, so there's definitely an ambush waiting outside. Hurry! Chu Shifeng said anxiously. Whether it was Chu Shifeng or Gu Beiyue, they both believed that Mu Qingwu would never betray them. But the identity of this master the young man spoke of was worth considering. To be able to bribe the commander of the imperial army to do such a huge thing, it was definitely not an easy task. Of course, Chu Shifeng and Gu Beiyue couldn't pursue the matter now. Saving a life was more important. The West? I came from the West. When I arrived, the assassins were still surrounding the area. I didn't see them. Mu Qingwu panicked. Chu Shifeng and Gu Beiyue grew anxious as well. Could it be that Gu Qisha didn't escape? Chu Shifeng asked, hoping for a fluke. If Gu Qisha had escaped, then the black-robed assassins wouldn't still be waiting in the west. Maybe he changed his path. Gu Beiyue said. Chu Shifeng, you wait here. I'll go search the surroundings. Mu Qingwu said decisively. If Gu Qisha hadn't escaped, then he'd definitely come out once he knew the Gu estate was safe. If he'd changed his path, then things would be troublesome. Heaven knows if he'd fallen into the enemy's trap. Not long after Mu Qingwu left, a few injured guards arrived. Chu Shifeng had them stand guard while he ignored his sword wounds and rushed to find His Highness Duke of Qin. As soon as he left, Gu Beiyue excused himself to rest. As soon as he left the guard's line of sight, he vanished from sight. Lil Thing couldn't catch up even if it wanted to. By now, Gu Qisha and Han Yunxi had long left the Gu estate, but were still running for their lives. Gu Qisha and Han Yunxi looked like they were heading west, but they'd met an even stronger group of crossbow archers before they'd even left the gates. These archers didn't just wield crossbows in one hand, but two in each hand. Their killing power doubled as a result. Their leader was none other than the black-robed assassin who'd fought with Chu Shifeng. Han Yunxi's shoulder had been pierced deeply by a crossbow bolt, leaving a trail of fresh blood. As for Gu Qisha's body, it was impossible to imagine. Currently, Gu Qisha was still clutching Han Yunxi tightly in his arms as they fled for their lives in a small, dark alley. He wasn't an idiot, so he knew he had to run towards a crowded area. He wanted nothing more than to run straight into the palace so he could draw attention to himself and draw reinforcements to him. But there was no way he could do that, because he was completely forced into the alley. Ahead of him was a dead end, while behind him, a steady stream of arrows followed. Gu Qisha grabbed Han Yunxi with one hand and tossed aside a pile of trash by the road with the other. He wanted to stop the arrows and jump onto the roof, but he'd barely made a move when multiple arrows came flying at him from above. He had no choice but to keep going. Fuck! Gu Qisha cursed angrily, but in his heart, he admired these archers. They were too strong, and used their crossbows to perfection. Once Shinjin was pinned down, it was hard to seize the initiative. You're using poison. I can't do it. This wasn't the first time Han Yunxi had urged him to do so, but Gu Qixia didn't listen. The crossbow archers weren't chasing after them at all. Moreover, judging from the trajectory of their arrows, they were constantly changing positions. In this situation where the enemy was in the dark, he was out in the open, it was a little difficult to use poison. More importantly, Gu Qixia didn't have any extra hands. He had to protect Han Yunxi with one hand while using the other to deflect the arrows. He had been concentrating all his attention, but he still let Han Yunxi get hit by an arrow. If he used his doppelganger to poison her, who knew if he could still protect Han Yunxi? These assassins were after Han Yunxi, so every arrow they shot was aimed at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi couldn't do anything either. She couldn't even see the archers clearly, let alone aim. Along the way, she'd used quite a few poisons to attract mosquito swarms, ant swarms, and poisonous spiders. She'd used everything she could think of, but unfortunately, nothing came to her. This was the imperial capital. How could there be so many poisonous insects? If there were no poisonous insects in a certain area, it didn't matter how many poisons she used. Her poison skills, which she had always been proud of, had long been despised by her. However, in this situation, even if she had Jun Yixie's master's ability to make use of the wind to poison people, she still wouldn't be able to create a large poisonous fog. In this place and in this climate, there was no fog at all. Suddenly, Gu Qixia's body trembled. Han Yunxi's brows furrowed even tighter. She knew that Gu Qixia had been hit by an arrow again. Ever since they left the Gu family, she had noticed that his body would tremble. This was already the 5th time. Although she was tightly protected in his arms and couldn't see anything, she could guess that he must have been hit by many arrows in his back. Gu Qixia, hand me over. Han Yunxi said seriously. Gu Qixia pretended not to hear her and continued to flee. Although it had only been a little over 2 hours since the Gu family had been attacked, escaping from a rain of arrows was very physically and mentally exhausting. Furthermore, he also had to protect Han Yunxi. Although Gu Qixia looked like he was walking with ease, he was actually holding on for dear life. How could Gu Qixia not hear her when she spoke so loudly? Han Yunxi knew that he was purposely ignoring her. Gu Qixia, hand me over, do you hear me? She yelled angrily. Handing her over was the only way out. Otherwise, Gu Qixia would be shot to death by a rain of arrows. Gu Qixia scoffed, stupid woman, do you want to die? You're the stupid one. That black-clothed expert's martial arts are far above yours. He probably hasn't approached us yet because he's afraid of my poison skills. Hand me over and I'll definitely be able to restrain him. Catch the ringleader and catch the thief, understand? Han Yunxi said seriously. Although she was being protected, she hadn't been idle at all. She had been constantly analyzing the situation and thinking of a way to deal with it. What if? Gu Qixia asked. What if? Han Yunxi didn't understand. What if they kill you right away? Gu Qixia asked again. I don't think they're here to kill me. It looks more like they're here to kidnap me, Han Yunxi said seriously. More like. Are you gambling with your life? Gu Qixia scoffed. Han Yunxi was silent for a long time before she answered seriously, I'm gambling. I'm gambling. I won't allow you to gamble. Gu Qixia suddenly became very angry. As he spoke, he hugged Han Yunxi tightly and pressed her against his chest, as if he was afraid that she would leave him at any moment. Han Yunxi's face was pressed against Gu Qixia's chest and she could hear his strong heartbeat. She wanted to struggle, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't move an inch. The sound of the wind breaking filled her ears as countless arrows flew past her, each one of them fatal. Life and death were separated by a fine line, but she couldn't help but admit that she felt safe in this unfamiliar embrace. Once again, an indescribable sense of familiarity filled her heart. However, Han Yunxi quickly regained her senses and said coldly, "Gu Qi Sha, you're the one who's courting death. If you continue like this, only death awaits you." She had cheated him out of half of Pill Fiend Pharmacy and broken the rules that had been inconvenient for him for more than 10 years. Shouldn't he hate her? Shouldn't he take this opportunity to take revenge on her? Why was he protecting her so desperately? Even if they were working together, there was no need for him to be so loyal and use his life to protect her. Han Yunxi loathed Gu Qi Sha's current behavior. She felt guilty when he acted like this. She would rather Gu Qi Sha be a wicked old man forever. "I won't die," Gu Qi Sha said unhappily. Han Yunxi would never have guessed that this was the truth. It wasn't a joke, nor was it something he said out of anger. He really wouldn't die. She could only feel the stench of blood on his body growing stronger and stronger. It was so strong that even she, who had never been afraid of blood, was beginning to feel afraid. "Gu Qi Sha, if you die, who's going to save me? If you die, I'll die too." Han Yunxi tried to goad him into action. Gu Qi Sha was slightly stunned, but he still replied angrily, "Han Yunxi, remember this, I won't die. I won't die. I'm not in the mood to joke around with you. I don't want to die yet. Don't try to show off and harm me," Han Yunxi deliberately said harshly. Gu Qi Sha still didn't answer and continued to fly forward. Soon, they reached the end of the alley. The end of the alley was actually, you're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.